Good evening, everyone. It is now 6 p.m. and Tuesday, February 18th, 2020. And I call to order the meeting of the Victorville City Council, Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, Joint Powers Financing Authority, Victorville Water District, and the city as housing as its successor. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Cox? Councilmember Gomez?
Present.
Councilmember Jones?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez? Mayor Garcia?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez absent.
This evening, the invocation will be delivered by Elder John Toomey of Calvary Chapel, Victorville, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Police Chief Rick Bassinger, so please stand.
Let us pray. Gracious Father in heaven, you are holy and true. So are your written promises, like Psalm 55, verse 17, that says, "Evening and morning at noon I will pray and cry aloud, and you shall hear my voice." Thank you for hearing our prayers. Thank you for blessing our nation. Because of you, we are greater than all other nations. Thank you for the different levels of government, especially the city of Victorville. Please continue to protect and prosper our city. Thank you for our elected officials, especially those here in this chamber tonight. The agenda is ready, yet I pray that your good and perfect will be done. I ask, gracious Father, please direct your Holy Spirit to impart wisdom to each council member, that they would have great confidence in knowing what is urgently needed and what needs our future for the betterment of our city. I pray also that you would be honored as the whole truth, and nothing but the truth is spoken here tonight. Please, by your Spirit, help each person to communicate their thoughts clearly, and help the hearers to hear correctly and fully understand what is said. Lord, please help each person to hold the other in high regard with due respect, lest we forget the words of the Lord Jesus, who gave us the two greatest commandments when he said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind and with all your strength, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself." There is no other commandment greater than these. Lord, we are all neighbors here trying to make our city better. We need you. Thank you again for sending your Holy Spirit to help us and guide us into all truth. I pray all this in the powerful name of Jesus. Amen.
This evening we have two presentations. The first one will be a certificate of recognition to the Victorville Recycles Week winners. And the second one will be to recognize two promotions within Victorville Fire Department. I will come down and assist with the presentations. The first presentation that we have this evening is for the Victorville Recycles Week. For the past 13 years, the City of Victorville has partnered with Burtech Waste Industries to host Victorville Recycles Week, the first week in November. This friendly competition is open to elementary, middle, and high school students throughout Victorville. The purpose is to educate students about the importance of recycling and to encourage them to take the recycling message home. If they take it home and they talk to the parents, of course, the parents will learn. I think that's the purpose behind it. Schools earn points by participating in a variety of recycling activities like school assemblies, in-class presentations, and field trips to the materials recovery facility. Each year, Victorville Recycles Week brings the recycling message to roughly 10,000 students. And since 2007, we estimate that more than 100,000 Victorville students have participated in this important program. I'd like to commend our Victorville Environmental Program staff for their excellent leadership in managing this program. And I'd like to thank Burtech Waste Industries for their long-standing sponsorship. At this time, I'd like to invite Dana Armstrong, our Environmental Programs Manager, and Josie Vargas from Burtech Victorville Disposal to come forward to announce the winners of this year's contest.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia and members of the City Council. Before we present the winners, I just want to give a few highlights of this year's event. We had 858 posters entered in the poster contest, 51 sculptures in the recycled sculpture contest, 35 in-class presentations to approximately 980 students, courtesy of Josie Vargas from Burtech. Mr. Eco Assembly Program gave 22 assemblies to roughly 8,200 students. We had 12 schools participate in our community cleanup day. We had 7 schools participate in the bottle and can recycling contest. 6 schools sent classes to take tours of the materials recovery facility. And as Mayor Garcia mentioned, we estimate roughly 10,000 students were impacted and participated in this year's event. So now it is time to announce the first place winners of this year's event. We'll start with the winner of the recycled poster contest. I don't know, I'm not sure if she came in after. Oh, she is here. Okay, great. I didn't get a chance to meet you before, but I'd like to invite Sofia Banuelos Escamilla. Did I pronounce it correctly, I hope, to come forward? Great. And Sophia is a 7th grade student at Cobalt Middle School, Institute of Math and Science. Like I said, there were 858 posters, and it was very hard to pick the best, but we really loved your poster. It was of the Victorville region and a great map, and then it had a big recycling symbol in the middle of it, which was wonderful. So Sophia receives a $100 check for being the winner of the recycled poster contest. Congratulations. Yes. We're going to get a few. Next, we're going to recognize the winner of the recycled sculpture contest. So I would like to invite Grace Clark and her family to come forward. And I would also like to invite Jan Gonzalez, superintendent of the Victor Elementary School District, to come forward. Okay, so Grace's sculpture is on display out in the foyer as well as the poster, and Grace's sculpture is of a house made out of recycled materials with a wonderful garden, and we were just very impressed with the detail that you put into it. And I think the thing that put it over the top is if you look carefully, you can see there's furniture inside the house made from recycled materials. So it was absolutely fantastic. And thank you very much and congratulations for winning. She also receives a $100 prize. Congratulations. And I'm going to ask Jan to stay up here for a moment. And then finally, we're going to recognize the winner of the top points, the school that won the most points. And any of you who have seen me up here before knows what I'm going to say. And once again, it's Mountain View Montessori School. They have done a fantastic job. I want to invite Ann Martins, teacher at Mountain View Montessori, and Tanya Newell, principal, to join us up front while we present this award. Now, Mountain View Montessori, for winning this contest, they get a $1,000 prize. And this is the, I have to look at my notes. This is the 7th time that Mountain View Montessori has won this, been the grand prize winner, and this is the 3rd or the 4th year in a row. 6th year in a row. I stand corrected. She's keeping track. They said they temporarily gave us the sculpture back so that we could put the new nameplate on it, but they're keeping a space there, and I joke that there's a dent in their counter from where the trophy stands. But just a little bit a summary. Their students submitted 189 posters, 14 sculptures. The winner of the YouTube contest was one of their students who did a fantastic YouTube on recycling. Mr. Eco visited their school and gave an assembly to all the students. All 2nd and 3rd grade classes went and toured the Victor Valley MRF. They did CRV recycling. They've started separating their food waste and are participating in our food waste program now. And they have an incredible on-campus recycling program. So they're just doing a wonderful job, and we really appreciate also how you incorporate recycling into your curriculum and make it a part of what you're doing at the school, not just that week, but throughout the year. It's incredible. So congratulations. We'll have another picture, and we're almost done. Oh, and we have to get the trophy in here. Who wants to hold it? Thank you so much, and congratulations. We'll come back next year and try and wrest it from your hands if we can. So I'm just going to summarize before closing. Why is recycling important? The city, we send all our trash to the county landfill. We spend over $3 million a year disposing of trash, and that's not the city's money, that's your money. That's money from ratepayers. Now, if you put it in the blue can or the white recycling dumpster for a business, it goes to the materials recovery facility. You save money on disposal costs. You generate revenues from the sale of the materials. It helps the environment. It helps the economics of our solid waste system. So it's a win-win. And I hope that through Victorville Recycling Week, we're encouraging people to participate more and every day recycle as much as possible and use the programs available. And just a final thank you. Thank you to Superintendent Gonzalez. Thank you to the teachers, the students. Thank you, Mayor Garcia and council members, giving me time to go through this. And thank you to Burtek. Thank you to Josie Vargas. She was the boots on the ground. She did 99% of the work associated with this program, and we really, really appreciate your help with it. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now this evening, I am honored to join the members of the City Council in recognizing two of our Victorville Fire personnel who were recently promoted. Training Captain Taiwan Washington was promoted to the rank of battalion chief, and Engineer Jordan Cope is our newest fire captain. I'd like to invite Fire Chief Greg Benson to come forward to help us recognize these outstanding members of our Victorville Fire Department.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Garcia and members of the City Council. Both of the individuals that we're going to recognize tonight have made significant contributions to the department and community in their previous roles. I'm confident that these contributions in their new roles will continue well into the future. Also want to recognize that we have a number of other members of the Victorville Fire Department here tonight to witness this, and I'll hear about that later, I'm sure. I'd like to invite Battalion Chief Washington up. So in October of 2018, Daiwan Washington joined the Victorville Fire Department as our training captain after serving over 20 years in the United States Air Force. He was promoted to the rank of battalion chief in January. Battalion Chief Washington has earned a master's degree in emergency services management and holds numerous advanced certifications. He is one of only 139 fire service professionals in the United States to have received the recognition as a Chief Training Officer by the Center for Public Safety Excellence. Sorry, his bio is so long it had to go on 2 pages. Battalion Chief Washington has provided essential leadership, mentoring, and emergency scene command to the Victorville fire personnel, and he is leading the implementation of our intern program, PFAL, which is Police Fire Athletic League, and Explorer programs. He resides in Victorville and is engaged to be married later this year. And I confirm that the engagement is still on. So, with that, I will let his fiancée pin him.
Oh, I got it.
Congratulations.
Would you all like to get together?
Congratulations.
Next, I'd like to invite Engineer Jordan Cope to come up. A Victorville native, Jordan Cope joined the Victorville Fire Department in January of 2019 as an engineer. In November of 2019, he was promoted to captain. Captain Cope is a graduate of the Victor Valley College Fire Science Program, where he earned his paramedic license and associate's degree in paramedicine. He has more than 15 years of experience and previously worked for the Apple Valley Fire Protection District and the Big Bear Hotshot Crew, where he developed extensive experiences in wildland firefighting at a national level. Captain Cope is very active in our youth programs in our community, and he serves as an instructor at the Victor Valley College Fire Academy. He is providing valuable leadership and development for his fellow Victorville Fire Department personnel. Captain Cope and his family live in our local area. Captain Cope brought his wife to pin him, so good luck.
That was so wonderful. A big congratulations to each and every one of the winners. Okay, now back to business. We will continue with our meeting here, and we start with public hearings. And we have item number 1, mid-year amendment to 2019-2020 fiscal budget. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the City Council and Board of Directors approve the changes reflected in the agenda along with the included attachments by adopting Resolution 20-002, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Victorville amending Resolution 19-042, as amended, the budget resolution for the City of Victorville for fiscal year 2019-2020, and adopting the amended table of organization, fixing the rates of compensation, and Resolution SCLAA 20-001, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, amending Resolution SCLAA 19-005, as amended, the budget resolution for the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority for fiscal year 2019-2020, and Resolution VWD-20-004, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Victorville Water District, amending Resolution VWD 19-006, as amended the budget resolution for the Victorville Water District for fiscal year 2019-2020, and Resolution LBT 20-001, a resolution of the Library Board of Trustees, amending Resolution LBT 19-001, as amended the budget resolution for the library for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Thank you very much. At this time, George has a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Give everyone a chance to pull that presentation. There we go. So, Madam Mayor, City Council, before you tonight is the proposed budget amendment that we better define as our mid-year budget analysis, which entails a review of the fiscal year 19-20 budget for activity that took place between July 1st through December 31st, representing the first 6 months of the fiscal year. On the agenda for the actual presentation, we're going to take a look at some details, some summary changes for the general fund, the special revenue funds, and enterprise funds. There are recommended changes to the personnel table of org. Then we're going to take a look at the general fund reserve, as well as a forward outlook projection specifically for the general fund. If you recall, when we adopted the budget in June of 2019, we had an original budget for the general fund representing about almost $64 million in expected revenue and about 63, the same amount in expenditure. But when you include the $1 million VMIS loan payment, it represented about $1 million surplus at year end, or expected at year end when the budget was created. Between July 1st and the present, there have been a number of budget adjustments that were adopted by council that amended the budget to the tune of changing the expected revenue from 63 million to about 65, and the expected expenditures from 63.9 to 65.2. Before you tonight is a compilation of a number of changes that have taken place specifically in the general fund, representing bringing the total revenue expected for the general fund to 66.8 million, and actually a reduction in expenditures as we were able to tighten the belt on a few items down to 64.9, leaving a remaining expected surplus of $2.9 million that to be deposited into general fund reserves expected at year end. When you look at the total city budget, the original budget was $215 million in total revenue across all funds. Total expenditure $217 million across all funds. And then tonight you see amended recommendations on the revenue side, including all the funds to the tune of $220 million, and adjusting the expenditure number up to $254 million, showing about a $33 million spending imbalance that is made up primarily from fund balance in the variety of funds listed there at the bottom of the chart. So it's not uncommon for, as capital projects to arise, to utilize fund balance from prior years, as the funds have been accumulated for that particular purpose. And there's a short list of which funds that represents. As you saw in the general fund, there's a surplus of 2.9 million, so that's not contributing to the 33. But if you do look below, it's summarized there. Local Transportation Fund 230 is utilizing $1.9 million of fund balance. Measure I fund is using $3.7 million in fund balance. The Water Fund is using about $12.1 million of fund balance towards projects. VMIS 420 is using 5.5, and then the Sewer Fund is using another 8.9. That just about represents the total of the $33 million that where funds are being utilized from fund balance to cover specific capital projects. Some of the highlights on the general fund side, we are recognizing, actually it's really good to see revenues increasing at this early stage in the fiscal year. So when compared to what we projected, we wrote the budget, the general fund is expected to experience about $2.8 million more in revenue than we projected when we wrote the original budget in June. As well as we're able to tighten the belt to the tune of $314,000 on the expenditure side, netting a final result that we still expect to be close to $3 million, a $2.9 million surplus by year end. On the gas tax and SB1 fund, we're recognizing increases of both $100,000, roughly $100,000, $150,000 respectively on each fund, based on additional revenue coming in, being recognized for both of those areas. On road diff and storm drain diff, we're recognizing making adjustment for an additional $281,000 to reflect an increase in development activity that we're experiencing for the first 6 months. On the landscape maintenance district, expenditure increases are around to the tune of $82,000 as a result of the cost of water to the actual landscape maintenance districts. We're making an adjustment there on an annual basis. And very similar here, very minor adjustments. If you go down a couple of bullets to the VMIS gas sales, we're making an adjustment for $800,000 due to increased transportation charges. On the revenue side, it's just the cost of that product is actually increased, so there's an effect on the fund there. Sanitary sewer revenue increased due to higher than anticipated connections, so there's an increase of revenue of $100,000 over the original $80,000 projected increase. And with the additional activity via lease occupancies up at the airport, we're recognizing an increase in total revenue to the tune of $1.4 million, and they expect to be about positive $1 million to contribute to fund balance at the airport by year end. As noted before, and as better detailed in your staff report and in the backup material, there's a few personnel changes that are being recommended by departments and suggested by the executive team. Starting in the Administrative Services Department, there's an individual holding the title of Finance Manager now that has been truly acting in a capacity that needs to be recognized. He's been kind of being compensated for working at a class pay for his role in the budget process, as well as being the lead manager in a number of different divisions within the department. And so there's an adjustment there for a title change. In the Community Services Department, there has been a request by the department to delete a lead worker and add 2 maintenance workers, so to add more staffing on the streets or in the facilities, I believe, and to increase the number of full-time workers at the library. There's a recommendation for more staff there. Under animal control, the department requested to delete an animal control officer and create an animal control community outreach officer. So was a vacant position that's being supplanted by title changed for an outreach effort there. And then to delete a previously used title of enforcement manager and to better specify the responsibility, and there's with no change to salary. Just changing the title from enforcement manager to animal control manager. That is a vacant position that will be recruited here shortly. In the Economic Development Department, there was a request to delete a vacant office assistant position and add an economic development technician as a transfer, and that position has been filled. At the airport, there was a recommendation to delete a airport maintenance worker and replace it with a senior maintenance worker with a minor cost upgrade. And in the fire department, there was a request to delete the training captain position, and you got to meet Battalion Chief Washington. The training captain position is actually his former position in the department. And after doing an analysis of the operations in the fire department, it's now becoming more and more clear that we need to separate the current responsibilities of the division chief and create a operations chief and a support staff chief to run some of the non-operations responsibilities. And so this allows us to utilize the savings from deleting a vacant position and creating a second division chief to run the operations side of the bit. For those that don't know, we are actually one of the busiest counties and our busiest cities in the county as far as fire response. And our guys are out there very busy. You got a chance to see a few of them tonight, but they were pretty anxious to get back out there on the streets because they're all very busy out there. So this reorg adds a second division chief to our organizational structure. Moving on to the Public Works Department, the Fleet Department has submitted a request to delete 2 part-time positions and upgrade them to full-time positions, add a mechanic, add 3 vehicle service workers, a senior mechanic, and a management technician for a net increase of 4 positions, but it's an upgrade of 2 of those positions from part-time to full-time. And so all of the adjustments that you have seen listed here have been reflected in the details of what you have serving as your backup to the recommendation tonight. And if you look on the general fund side, we're still able to, with the changes, including these position changes, able to reduce the overall budget by about $300,000. So we're utilizing a lot of salary savings and other savings that we discovered through our research to be able to afford these position increases. General fund reserves. So when we wrote the budget, there was an expectation that the general fund reserves would have a chance to meet its 15% requirement at year end. And so we blew through that expectation at the closure of the fiscal year. of fiscal year 18-19. On another item tonight, you'll have, I believe our auditor is, there he is in the 10. He's in the back, and he's going to present how the fiscal year 18-19 closed in a positive position. But what you have before you today, as far as the mid-year, is an even further acknowledgement that that reserves are now, not only are we meeting the reserves, but we expect that by the end of this fiscal year, that we're substantially meeting our reserves to the tune of 24% of expected budgeted expenditures, where the reserve policy stands at 15. So we're actually, on the general fund side, doing pretty well as far as reconstructing those reserves, and now it's our mission to protect those reserves as best we can and only use those for emergency purposes. But with the changes at mid-year, we've moved from our original expectation, and if you look at the chart, the green bar represents where we expected to be when the budget was written, but it also inclusive of how we finished out fiscal year 19 compared to our post mid-year analysis, which shows that we'll be able to put that extra $2.9 million in the bank, which moves our general fund reserve up from 20% to close to 24%. So we're doing well, and I know that that's been a topic of discussion at the dais for at least as long as I've been here. Where are we at with our reserves? Are we doing enough to pad those reserves and build those reserves? And I gotta say that the last 2 years have been fruitful in that light, to make sure that we are, one, building the reserves, and now it's our mission to protect them. This is a chart that was presented to the council at the time that we presented the budget, and it showed that times are good. So if you look back at the 2019-2020, the blue line and the red line meet. And so ideally, when you write a budget, you want to make sure that you're bringing in enough revenues to meet your obligations or meet your expenditures. As we proceeded through 2020-21, through our forecasting that we've done, and we've done a 15 to 18-year look, and it could be drug out again to 20 years if necessary. But our prior projections that were performed at mid-year showed that we started to see some negative spending outwardly looking in fiscal year 21, 22, and then starting to really start utilizing the reserves, which the two lines on the bottom represent the reserve balance. The green line is the reserve balance. The purple line is the reserve requirement. And so the prior estimate showed that we after 21-22, we start spending, going into negative spending, and we show that with that green line dipping below zero at 23-24, that we would have utilized and burnt all of our reserves where they lied prior to the mid-year analysis. Now that the mid-year is complete, you see that we're able to build that larger reserve. So if you look at the green line now peaking at 2021, 22, at the bottom of the chart, you actually see the growth of that general fund reserve. And as a result of the revenues performing better and actually starting to really outperform, you don't show any negative spending until 21, 23. So the negative spending doesn't start until a year further. And as a result of being able to build better reserves, we become a little bit more sustainable going into fiscal year 24, 25. So the end statement here is that I think we're doing better, and it's in essence has bought us a little bit more time, but the expense demands that we know by way of public safety and by way of other cost inflation factors are looming and probably expect to grow and outpace the growth in revenues. And so it becomes an inevitable situation that at some point you're going to have to reconcile that situation. And so, yeah, we bought ourselves a couple more years with the newest information, and I think it's good, but you have a management team and leadership and executive team that is proactively looking at these projections and making sure that we stay ahead of the game, looking definitely deep into the future. So that's the idea of this chart, is to really show, yeah, we bought a few years, but it's still something to pay attention to. At this point, I'm available. I have a few of my staff members in the audience is available to answer any questions. I know Keith and Sophie are here as well.
Can I answer questions now? Does anybody have any questions?
Staff, from council or from staff? We haven't opened the public hearing.
We have not opened the public hearing.
I have a
Council
question,
members.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
We have a table of organization that's included for the positions, and Exhibit B, page 49, is very complete in regard to the deleted positions and the added positions. There's no job descriptions, and is the council the body that approves new job descriptions, or is that done by personnel, independent of the council's action?
Job descriptions are done by personnel approved by the personnel officer.
Okay. I noticed some of our very old job descriptions are approved and signed by the council or the mayor at the time they were approved, on the assumption that since the city council is required to approve the table of organization, there was an assumption they also had to approve the job descriptions, especially when you have someone filing a complaint about working out a class that city council is ultimately responsible. And I wondered, it's been a long time, but I wondered when that was changed, whether the staff could do that without the council's approval.
And I don't know if we're aware of anybody filing a complaint regarding working out of class, but I know that we've acknowledged and had compensated that person the working out of class compensation per our policy, and now we're acknowledging that. But I don't know exactly quite the history of when the job descriptions were approved by the personnel officer, but I know that has been the practice for some years since I've been involved.
And if there's any modifications that can be done at a later time, I was just curious because based upon that table, there appears to be a lot of new positions, unless they used existing job descriptions that were filled or expanded the job descriptions. It doesn't say which one occurred, and it can be answered later, but I'm of the impression that the legislative body must approve those. But it may be
Approved
wrong.
job descriptions?
Yes.
That may have been a practice in the past, as long as I can remember, which is quite some time. Personnel officer has always been responsible.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have a couple questions, may I? Thank you. In that vein, with regard to the table of organization, on the staffing changes, will they bring about greater service to our community and efficiency in operations?
Absolutely, that was the idea, and I'll let Keith chime in as to what the process was to even request a change. This was not a kind of a free-for-all, tell us what you need. The justification had to be pretty substantial to even request the change, and Keith can echo kind of his position on it because he was ultimately the decider.
That's correct. And before we even shared the revenue perspective, just so that you're aware, we didn't create the impression that because the revenue perspective for the city is better, that's going to be the license to spend. In fact, we were very lean and very conservative when we approved the original budget back in June. And the exercise that we required all departments to go through before submitting their requests officially was for them to go in through and do an in-depth analysis as to the justification for the particular position. And probably the most in-depth analysis that I was a part of involved the Public Works Department, particularly dealing on the fleet side. And while you'll notice that on the Public Works fleet side of the house, that was probably where the greatest number of position adds were placed. And that was after I was convinced, looking at all of the analysis that started with what is the workload analysis, what is the workload responsibilities for every piece of equipment, every piece of apparatus that we have, whether it's loaders, whether it's water trucks, whether it's our just regular vehicles that we use for City Hall here. There's an ability to attach a total number of hours. If you're to maintain that particular unit properly, you're able to attach a number of hours required to properly maintain that particular unit. Now, when you multiply that over the several hundreds of units that we have, it's a big number, and we were able to identify a total required workload of over 17,000 hours if we're to properly maintain not only our city fleet, but now, our police department fleet, but also now that we're taking on fire department, that's an increased number of hours required to satisfy the maintenance needs of the fire apparatus. altogether, we went through and found that with the existing labor force that we have, we just were not staffed properly to where we can actually achieve that $17,000 number. In fact, the labor hours available were more like 11, approaching 12,000 hours. So one of the things that we saw was a clear difference between what we can physically do and what's required to properly maintain our infrastructure. So that being said, that was a kind of analysis that had to go into justifying whether or not we're going to do position adds, and that's all from the perspective of doing the position adds so that we're not actually increasing the cost of replacing an apparatus due to lack of maintenance over time.
All right, and then with regard to, I know that it's going to come about in fairly short order that we are going to be deficit spending, and we're going to have real difficulty with our budget. And as I recall correctly, we have about a 25% increase in public safety over the course of next 5 years. Is my understanding correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Point of clarification, what fund are you speaking of? We have over 88 funds. Which one are you referring to?
I'm talking about the budget as it relates to our expenditures and how over the course of the time our expenditures are going to exceed our revenue.
So not one particular fund, it's overall?
Overall.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our answer was to the general fund because public safety is funded out of general fund.
Sure. Okay. All right. So at some point we're gonna have to look at addressing that, because even though we've built reserves, those reserves are intended for crisis or emergency situations, not for day-to-day operations.
That effectively, that's correct. We would
correct.
characterize that as your rainy day fund. But one of the things that we're looking at as well is whether or not the reserve target of 15% was done so arbitrarily. We don't know the thought process or the science that goes into that number, because we also believe there's cash flow needs just to carry out your normal operations throughout the year. There's actual cash needs, operating needs that are likely greater than that 15%. So we're trying to actually assess and determine if 15% is even too low,
Okay.
just so that you can keep the general fund during the course of the year from having to borrow from other funds until sales tax and revenue, property tax revenue pops start coming in. So we're trying to decide if the reserve target is appropriate. What we do believe is we don't necessarily know that we can rely on the high rate of growth that we just experienced and are realizing in this mid-year budget. Will continue to project conservatively, and believing in those conservative projections, that's where we do get concerned about deficit spending, and without doing anything to change that curve, you effectively do have a potential to draw down your cash to zero.
So point of clarification for you, Keith. You're talking about the general fund again?
Madam
or
Mayor,
talking about
I
the
still believe I
budget?
have the floor,
Yeah, but as a point of clarification,
but I still have the floor.
right.
All right. So, and then just a quick question. In the table of organization, when you talk about deleting positions, you're effectively abolishing the position. Is that correct?
We're deleting them from the authorized positions list. And so as far as job descriptions are concerned, we still retain the use of those job descriptions if
You
we were
do?
ever
Okay.
going to use them again. But the idea is that those positions, once deleted, are not authorized to be filled.
Got it. All right. That's all I have for now, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thomas, you're next.
So you guys were having, in my opinion, a one-way conversation with each other. My point of clarification was not to interrupt Jones and what you were stating, Keith. It was to really understand, because we were talking about the general fund, but Ms. Jones says she's talking about the general budget. But when you were answering, Keith, the questions for her, you were specific towards the general fund, which is very distinct from all 88 plus funds. So if that's not clarified for the point of my understanding or for the general audience, the discussion is only between you and Mrs. Jones. It doesn't pertain to anybody who's not understanding through a point of clarification. So that becomes very unintelligible for a lot of us. So again, my question is, were you only talking about the general fund because police and fire only are coming out, in my understanding, from the general fund, unless we're subsidizing from enterprise funds or other funds that I'm not aware of? So if you can clarify that.
We were only talking about the general fund, and you're correct that the general fund is the only fund that actually is funding your public safety, police, and fire costs.
Thank you. So the other question that I have is also in regards to General Fund 2019-2020. So during the Victorville Chamber, specifically during Mrs. Jones' presentation, there was an exuberant amount of 64% that's coming out of the budget general fund for police and fire. However, no later than 1 year before that had concurred, it was a 42%. So as a council member and a general audience, I'm very confused as to if police and fire are essentially taking 42% of our general fund, or if indeed, as in the Victorville Chamber presentation, it is now 64%. I need that clarification, please, because I'm still confused on those numbers.
The 64% number sounds more accurate.
Okay, so would you please explain since when that changed? Because I don't know, maybe it's the $500,000 for technology and then some of the reparations for the bathroom and the carpeting. Is that what we're incurring and the additional amendment that was just approved by council?
I would argue that the safety has always been to the tune of that percentage in the general fund, whether we were contracting out for fire or whether they're inside and now all the way. The total costs for fire have gone down since we've brought it in-house, but 60 to 64% is pretty typical for the cost of safety in the general fund.
Okay, so in my conversations as a council member, I have alluded to and made specific, said 42%, and Keith has said yes. So because I kept that number in my head and heard 64, it was a huge jump between a year and 6 months. So I'm just clarifying if all those budgets in betweens that we've been approving for fire was indeed was happening, because I didn't consider any of that. And if that's the case, then 64 is now the percentage.
No, I'd like to look at what document you're using to reference 42. That seems rather low.
Yeah, and in my conversations publicly, I had made 42%, and it was concurred as a yes. If I was wrong, I would have loved for you to correct me, because now that I'm looking at those numbers, now it looks like we're either not online, we're not in the same tonality, and we need to be on the same track that you are, because we're making decisions. So that's the final question. Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, just for the sake of clarity and to benefit those in the audience, the 64% of the general fund is the more accurate number. I'm not sure where the 42% number is. I do know, particularly because I helped participate in the presentations of the past 2 fiscal budgets, and those are numbers that we specifically called out as measures in each of the budget presentation, and we can actually pull those presentations out. The 64 is the more accurate of the total general fund towards public safety.
Thank you. Okay, everyone has spoken, and at this time I open the public hearing. I do not have any speaker cards. I close the public hearing. I need a motion and a second on this item.
Madam Mayor, if there's no other questions, I move that we adopt council recommendations in regard to the resolutions that are attached that make the mid-year adjustments for the 2019-20 fiscal year budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. Any further comments?
Yes. So during Keith Mesler's presentation to the city and to the council, the figure of 42% did come up. That was no more than a year ago. And because I feel I've been left out in these talks, I feel, just like the public, we have 72 hours. I don't have any access to be able to meet with Keith any longer or anymore. As formerly I had suggested, I was meeting with him for 3 to 4 hours to understand all these processes, and I no longer have access to any administrative staff. And so as you are learning this stuff new, so am I. So I'm disinclined to approve this budget because I'm not going to make something where I'm not aware of what accountability, lack of transparency is occurring. And that's my 2 cents for the general public that I am representing today.
Any further comments? I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with Councilmember Gomez voting no and Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez absent.
Now we move on to item number 2, approve a notice of exemption and award of construction contract to CS Legacy Construction, Inc. for the skate park at Doris Davis Park. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve the notice of exemption for the skate park at Doris Davies Park, award a construction contract to CS Legacy Construction for the skate park at Doris Davies Park in the amount of $1,199,528.
Thank you. At this time, council members, do you have any questions of
Yes.
staff? 3 minute
Yes,
time
Madam Mayor,
limit.
I do.
Who was asking?
Yes, I
Go
do.
ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, other than in January 2020 when this item was tabled so that a fellow council member could be present, the last time there was any council discussion related to the skate park project was on November 20, 2018. Since much time has passed, will you please give us a thumbnail sketch of the evolution of this project?
Thank you. Yes, I can. This project is something that has been discussed, deliberated for many years, and in fact the basis for staff's recommendation to approve the skateboard project is largely based upon the 5 separate directions that the council had participated dating back to October 15, where the City Council first directed its Community Services Advisory Committee to recommend a preferred park location. From then, there were continued actions to where the council then participated in directing and approving the design build. There were some issues that I had discovered first coming on as city manager in January of 2018, to where I asked the council to pump the brakes a little bit just because of the way the project was approved. It was approved also as a design build, which I didn't think necessarily was going to give the city the most accountability in getting cost controls in building that project. But notwithstanding that, the council still continued to participate in the decision to move forward and subsequently approved a design contract to allow us to do a design bid build project. The council then subsequently in May of 2018 considered the options that came back from the designer, and the designer came back with both a small option that was originally conceived by the council, but then actually based upon feedback from survey results that had been undertaken from the community, there was feedback that suggested wanting something bigger and more meaningful in terms of a skateboard park project. So the council even participated in that decision and directed staff to move forward with the larger project, along with considering a number of additional amenities to nicen up the Doris Davies Park. So with that, we had eventually gotten to 2018 where we had to reject bids because of some bid irregularities that we were becoming aware of, but staff was still directed to bring this item back, rebid it, and bring this item back, which brings us to the point where we're at today, where we've separated out the 2 bids. Actually, the 2 items dealing with skateboard park would be item number 2 and item number 3. And we've separated out both the skateboard park as one project and then the amenities project, which includes landscaping, parking lot lighting, bathrooms, and a number of other amenities in a separate bid package. But those together are being brought back for your consideration based upon past directions by the City Council.
Very good, thank you. And do you consider the public hearings held over the span of this proposed project robust and fairly administered?
I do. In fact, I believe they were done not only robustly and fairly, but we did put a lot of effort into seeking community input along the entire way.
All right, so the change in the overall cost of this project to some may appear to have sharply increased. In my mind, part of the rise in cost is due to the council having almost doubled the size of the skate park itself, as well as having added on improvements that you just talked about, such as lighting, security cameras, a water fountain, and 2 restrooms. So understanding that the council took action to split the bid process into 2 distinct components, one for the skate park construction, that's this item, and the other for park amenities, that's the next item on the agenda. Will you please give us a categorical breakdown of the recommended bid for skate park construction?
Yes, the actual breakdown as we have it for this particular item is $1,259,000 for the actual skateboard park. And in item 3, you're dealing with a total cost of $660,000 for the amenities, which includes $217,000 that was approved back in August of 2018 for the 2 restroom facilities, bringing the grand total of the project to $1.92 million. That amount is just slightly greater than the amounts that we saw in November of 2018 when we did have to reject due to the bid irregularities. In comparison, and perhaps the reason for the belief that it's more than doubled, it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison to where we started in July of 2017. The original award for that much smaller project on a, I'd say an inferior location within the park, was about $600,000. So I think when it comes to trying to compare the costs, there is an attempt to compare where we were at in July and where we're at today, but they're 2 completely different projects.
Right. In fact, we went from approximately 8,500 square feet to 15,600, so almost double.
Sounds
if I
about
recall
right.
correctly. All right. So there's $6,616,834.81 in the recreation diff cash fund balance. Is it correct to say that it's been 10 years since we spent monies from this account for recreation improvement projects?
10 or 11 years. I think the last meaningful expenditure out of that fund was the construction of the Sunset Ridge Park.
Presuming this project moves forward tonight, will we have sufficient monies remaining to focus on other park improvement projects that the CSAC committee might identify in its upcoming master plan?
The answer is yes. Staff is actually looking forward to completing the master planning project. From our perspective, being able to start a master planning project with fund balance, unencumbered fund balance, actually makes it more realistic for us to be able to move forward in actually building things that are eventually adopted in that master plan.
Thank you. And monies have long since been budgeted for this project with no additional appropriation required tonight. Do I understand this correctly?
That is correct as to the skateboard park. There is additional appropriation
Right,
requested.
just for this item,
Right.
yes. All right, and do we have a representative here from CS Legacy by chance? Okay. Please explain the bid solicitation and subsequent submittal processes.
Well, we originally, and to my understanding, back in July of 2017, we may have started with a sole source design build contractor. We eventually changed and switched gears to where we actually retained that firm to be the designer, but then we used the design specs to then do an actual design bid, then build the project. So as we got the design complete and got the approval by the council to move forward with the design, we took those bid specs and actually put them in bid packages and eventually circulated them out to the public to bid on, seeking responsible bidders to actually respond back with costs. And with that, we've brought those proposals forward, and tonight is the result of that process.
And does the council have your confidence that CS Legacy Construction Incorporated has the expertise and resources necessary to take this project to fruition?
Objection. You can't speak for me.
The answer is yes.
Thank you. Is it fair to say that much time and effort has been invested in carrying out the directives of the council?
Oh, no question.
Is it accurate to say that the sole purpose of this agenda item is to determine whether the council should order a notice of exemption and award the contract to CS Legacy Construction?
I would agree with that, yes.
Objection. No one understands that question.
I'm happy to repeat it again, but I don't want it counted toward my time. May I, Madam Mayor? Is it accurate to say that the sole purpose of this agenda item, meaning that's what's posted tonight, is to determine whether the council should order a notice of exemption and award the contract to CS Legacy Construction?
Yes.
That answer was yes.
Should is
And that's our
mandatory.
job tonight, right? It's not to re-argue the merits of whether we should have a skateboard park in Victorville, because
30
that
seconds.
deliberation has already occurred.
I believe, in fact, that deliberation has occurred. I believe that deliberation has occurred. Staff is bringing this forward as it's been directed to, and therefore the basis of staff's recommendation is that we've followed your direction. We've put the project through the requisite process before we can actually bring it back to you for consideration. We've identified that there's sufficient funding, so therefore, it's staff's view that it's just to deal with the CEQA exemption and the award of contracts.
Okay. And in fact, deliberation not only has that already occurred, but a decision has already been made. And that's why staff has done its work. Is that correct?
I believe that to be true.
Okay. And in fact, Mr. Dubordnowski, it would be a breach of law under policy for the council to engage or participate in discussion that is not the subject matter of the posted agenda item or goes beyond the confines of a pending motion.
That would be correct. The discussion tonight should be limited to the agenda item number 2.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes. So, what funds is the city manager discussing when he's going to be spending nearly $1.9, nearly $2 million?
Madam Mayor, if I might, with the exception of a small amount from local transportation funds, probably 95, if not more, % of the entire project is being funded from the development impact fees specific for Parks and Recreation. And those funds are generated in connection with the build-out of the city as an example, for every home or every commercial building that's built in the city of Victorville. Among the myriad of different fees that are required to be paid, there is a calculation that requires what's called a development impact fee. And for us here at the city, development impact fees are collected basically to build capital, future capital needs. And we collect them not just for parks, we collect them from roads, we collect them for public safety, for public buildings. There's a number of different purposes, but in this particular case, we're talking specifically about the fund for DIF that is for the Parks and Rec.
And how
Parks
much
and Rec
has
Department.
been spent thus far? An actual amount? How much has been spent thus far, the actual amount?
Well, right now we're sitting on, and I think that's in the staff report, but it's actually in the staff report on item 3. But there's about a $6.6 million unencumbered fund balance. We haven't really drawn on that fund since we built the Sunset Ridge Park back in 2009-ish. And so the funds that we're talking about here, the 1.9, let's just call it $2 million, to complete the entirety of this project would be drawn from that $6.6 million.
Let me repeat
Parks
the
and Rec
question.
DIF.
How much money actually has been spent to date?
On this particular project,
Yes.
it'd be, you know what? It would be the design contract. I'm sorry, I don't have that number. I'd have to go back to the staff report when we awarded that contract back in $100,000. We can get that number for you. That was the design contract that we awarded to Spawn Ranch probably in, hang on, I got the date here, February of 2018. About $50,000.
And tell me about what you said there's 2 projects. What are these 2 projects that you were illuminating?
So if you look at not only the item that we're on, which is item 2, dealing specifically with just the skateboard park, item 3, we actually separated out as a separate project, and we did that resultant from the City Council's direction at the last meeting, where we separately bid restrooms. There's 2 restrooms. There's a pretty good amount of flat work, which is like sidewalks. We've got lighting. We've got security cameras, ADA improvements. I'm sure there's more. There's landscaping improvements, as an example. And that's what's separate. That's what we're calling a separate project, and that's in item number 3.
And then you said the development impact fees also go for public safety, public roads, and what else were the items that you had enumerated?
There are separate funds. There are separate development impact fee funds for police. There are separate development impact fees for fire. Those are the public safety ones. There's also a separate one for street lights, I believe. Brian, if you'll shake your head. Yep, he's shaking his head, yes. Public facilities. For example, many years ago when we built City Hall, development impact fees for public facilities, this would be an example of what that fund would pay for.
And when you said something about encumbered fund balance, what did you mean by that?
Unencumbered fund balance, which means fund balance, in this case cash, that doesn't have any encumbrances on it, meaning any pledges or any obligations.
When you said the word meaningful, 10 to 11 meaningful, and the only one you said is Sunset Ridge, please describe and define in your definition, what does the word meaningful mean?
I think that qualifier is put in place for something like the $50,000 associated with the design contract.
Okay, and in terms of the encumbered funds, then the cash hasn't been pledged to the library, to any soccer fields, to any YMCA or anything like that. It's free for anything.
For anything that is eligible under the Parks and Rec DIF program.
So eligibility for Parks and Rec would be the skate park?
Yes.
Would be a library?
I believe we have a separate DIF fund for library.
Would be a soccer field?
If so decided, a soccer field probably could.
What are other options that we have within the first 5 that we had?
New parks.
New parks. Thank you. No further questions.
Since we have no other questions, I open the public hearing. And I do have some speaker cards. I will keep it a 3-minute time limit. The first one is Julia Turner, I believe it is. After Julia will be Rachel. I cannot make up the last name.
May I please have everyone here in support of the skate park to stand? Council members, I respectfully ask for 5 minutes of your time to speak on behalf of all the people standing behind me right now. We are here today to ask you to please move forward with the development of the proposed skate park. According to census.gov, there are nearly 390,000 people living in the high desert. 32.5% of them youth, 18 and under. The Daily Press recently reported that the high desert has grown by 1,500 residents in the last 6 years, with the city of Victorville experiencing an almost 85% increase since 2001. The high desert is booming, so what can we do to ensure an enriching environment for our youth? Besides the obvious physical and outdoor benefits skateboarding offers, it has also been linked with psychological benefits. Skating increases self-confidence, equilibrium, and stress relief. Not only will this park enrich the community for our youth, I believe it will also produce a positive economic impact. This proposed park would bring skaters from all over the Southern California to not just the skate park, but to our gas stations and our restaurants, as well as giving our residents an opportunity to spend and stay local versus commuting down the hill to parks like Ferguson. The market for skateboarding is worth an estimated $4.8 billion in annual revenue, with over 11 million active skateboarders internationally. Not to mention, skateboarding will be introduced into the Olympics this year. People in cities and countries all over the world are embracing and enjoying the benefits of skateboarding culture has to offer. I strongly hope our city will join in and do the same. Please move forward with this park.
Excuse me, did I understand that you were speaking for everyone that turned in a card, or? Okay. Okay, Rachel was next. I can't make out the last name. After Rachel will be Eric Negretti.
Hi, everyone. So I think like we were saying so I was going to talk about the skate park, but I wanted to comment on the actual conduct of the council before I continue. I do think it's I don't want to say embarrassing, but I do think, Ms. Gomez, I think whatever issues or...
Just stay with the...
Yes, you need to stay within the item.
I know, but I think it's really important. I will, but it's also really important just in terms of
Put
like, how
another
you guys
comment
deal
card.
with one another. You can cut her off, but don't cut me off.
Put another comment card. You have to
Okay,
stay just like I do. So do you.
Yeah, this is kind of...
You have to
what-
stay
what
within
this
guidelines.
is-
Okay, it's called decorum.
This
Captain?
is exactly what I'm talking about. When you're talking about representing the constituents, you have to just like have respect for one another and allow each other to talk so these things can go on. Because it's embarrassing. You know, we're sitting here and it makes people uncomfortable. So I'll continue the skate park. So when talking about statistics and numbers, thank you for listening. So when talking about statistics and numbers and things like that, you have to acknowledge that skate parks are not just money and revenue and like skateboard sales, you know what I mean? Like they're community and they save lives. You have to acknowledge that parks, you're talking about a soccer field, and you can have a skate park and a soccer field at the same place. You know what I mean? You can have all of those things together. You have to acknowledge that a skate park isn't a lower end tier of a recreation. It's not, it shouldn't have a stigma against it. You know what I mean? Soccer isn't better than skating. People that skate play soccer. You know what I mean? So it's like the way you're talking about it makes us sound like we're dirty, you know, or it makes it sound like it's wrong. I think everyone here can say that whether they skate or not, their lives have been saved in some way, shape, or form. And so when we have suicide rates, when we have drug abuse, when we have addiction, when we have, you know, like our friends dying and kids dying, you know, the skate park, it's not just a skate park. You know, when you're talking about money, you know, money for what? You know what I mean? There should be, you know, build a beautiful park with a beautiful fountain, you know what I mean? And rose gardens and, you know, places for us to read and places for us to feel safe. You know what I mean? Like, you guys have to acknowledge, like, we just want a safe place. We want a safe place. You know what I mean? Like, don't cut the budget, don't cut the funding, you know what I mean? Like allow us to have a safe place. If there are things that you feel are not safe about skate parks, then help us get rid of them and help us make them safe. You get what I'm saying? You know, give us solar lights so we can have lighting all the time, you know what I mean? So we're cutting on funding. There are so many ways to save money and give us all of this. Give us more than, you know what I mean, what's just written down on paper. You know, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful, and I'm going to stay within my time. So thank you all, and just thank you all. Thank you.
Please refrain from clapping because it's taking away the time for the next person. So let's be respectful, and you can all clap at the end, okay? Eric Negretti.
Good evening, Council. Those two speakers were fantastic. I don't know if I can do as well, but I'm going to try. Captain Bessinger and Chief Benson, city staff. It's a pleasure to be here. I haven't been here in a while. But we are talking today about the skate park, and there's a lot to say that we've already talked about and hashed out, so I was glad to kind of reset the conversation for where we are today. This project can be summed up in one phrase or sentence that came about when we started talking about this some years ago. And I would like to acknowledge that the skate park is not a new concept. It has been around for a long time. There is a process. No matter how ugly it is, there's a process to go through. And if you just remain dedicated and committed and do it step at a time, things usually work out. So, but this can be summed up by this statement. If your city does not have a skate park, your city is a skate park. And that's something that has come up time and time again, because you have a use that recreation use that is not easy to find in a shopping center, an apartment complex. Matter of fact, most of the time you find signs that say that is not allowed. So providing something like this is a great opportunity to show the youth here that we are invested in them, that we do hear them. My first skateboard was a yellow plastic skateboard, probably about this big. And we lived on a hill, which wasn't good for me. But I certainly, if we would have had a skate park, much like the skate parks you see today, there's a lot of different obstacles and terrain that you can cover there that you can't duplicate on a sidewalk and whatnot. So this is not a small project. This is a 15,000 square foot project. I want to emphasize that this is not a check the box exercise by any means. A lot of work went into this, so I'd like to thank the city staff. There's a lot of nuances that people behind the scenes may not appreciate. But again, this was something that it's a real team effort here in Victorville, so I couldn't be prouder to be here with you guys today. Real quick, we talked about the recreation diff funding, so we're not raising taxes for this project. This is a quality of life project. So adding another amenities for the youth. When you do a strategic plan, you're going to talk about quality of life. This is one of those things. And the staff gained immense amount of experience with this project. And one of the other things we learned is a city this size could have up to 5 skate parks. So the experience gained from this project is going to really help pay off. And I just want to say I grew up here in the 80s. There was no such thing as a skate park. Hook Park was just a desert, and we ran around Hook for exercise, but we'd appreciate your support for the skate park tonight. Thank you.
I will repeat myself again. Please refrain from clapping until the end. Celeb, I believe it's Celeb, and I cannot, the writing, I don't know, I can't make out last name.
Howdy. I just wanted to give off personal account for everything that they've been saying towards that it's been helping people out. When I moved here in, I believe 2016 from Oregon, I didn't know the culture of this place at all. I am in Apple Valley currently, but just the Victorville and Apple Valley and just the strong community of skating. I had people that were very welcoming of me from the skating community and got me into it, and I was just able to, I didn't know how to associate with new people. It was something completely new to me because I used to live in the same area for a very long time, and just that they were inviting, and it just made me feel like that the community for that is just great, and that they are welcoming people, and the fact that they're just open-minded with that, and that they stay out of trouble with these kinds of things, with skating especially, like they were saying earlier, the cities, your area to skate and everything, but sorry, I lost my train of thought, but just in general with that, it's a great thing to have a recreational thing. I play soccer, but I also have been able to find other things recreationally that I can do, and skating has been one of them, and just the skate park in general would be great. I'm not trying to waste too much time. I just wanted to say in personal account that it has been something that's helped me, and I couldn't be more thankful for the area. That's it.
Aaron Moreno.
Hello and good evening. I discovered skating when I was about 12 years old in middle school. I grew up in Hesperia. I've been here since I was 6 years old. During that time, during my skating, I learned determination, I learned hard work and perseverance, and each and every one of those qualities, I think, brought me throughout high school, throughout my college career, through my bachelor's degree, and into my career now. And I think I use those qualities each and every day. I think they provide that stuff for the youth that you see behind me. Another thing is, during that same time, a friend of mine named Brian was also discovering skating. Brian is not here with us today because he was struck by an automobile and passed away during high school. And the reason for that was 100% because he didn't have somewhere to skate, and he was on a road, the same way I used to skate, and all of my friends used to skate on roads because we had nowhere else to go. And I'm here 10 years later, very lucky to be speaking, and I just feel like there was a completely unnecessary death that I had to encounter from a friend in the skating community. and I believe it was just because of a simple misunderstanding. I'm sorry, not misunderstanding, a mistake, or maybe an oversight from the council members, maybe at my time when I was a young child, when people were trying to get skate parks, or maybe they just had no interest in doing stuff like that. And right now we have a great opportunity to provide that safety of a place where the youth can skate, and something like that never has to happen again. So I thank you for, hearing us out today, and I hope you make the right decision and not let that mistake happen again.
Thank you. Christopher Castaneda.
Hello? Hello? My name is Christopher Castaneda. Right now I'm currently an instructional aide in special education, mostly working with the emotionally disturbed and considered at-risk youth. Everybody here brought up a lot of good points that I'm not going to waste your time with anymore. But what I can do is share my story. There's a lot of the skateboarding saves lives, and that is my story. Skateboarding has shaped me in so many ways, but what I didn't realize when I was young was how skateboarding protected my physical and mental health. You see, when I had just turned into a teenager, my family was falling apart. I didn't have the proper guidance to make friends. I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know how to be myself, nor did I know who I was. All I knew was that I wanted the yelling to stop and the tension in my chest to just let me live. I was so anxious for any invitation away from home at the time, and as a result, I found myself hanging with people whom I did not respect. I don't blame my parents for not paying too much attention to me during that painful period, because now as an adult, I can't even imagine the pain and depression they went through during that period as well. But life does not discriminate. Yes, the parents are the hugest role for a child and teen to transition into an adult. But what saved my life was the option to skateboard. And our youth needs options for everyone, not just for those who have parents that are active in their lives. Because as much as I would have enjoyed to play sports, who was going to drive me to my games? Skateboarding is not a mindless activity, but can be better described as classical music. Because just like classical music, it is a fine-tuned machine that goes off the rails with one tiny mistake. Skateboarding is physics, learning about weight distribution and how the slightest movement affects big changes in our overall outcome. Skateboarding is resilience. How many times do I need to do something wrong before I get it right? Skateboarding, and although I can list 1,000 things skateboarding is, I think the most definition is skateboarding is therapy. Because it did not stop my problems of the world, but taught me how to quiet them and use that newfound negative energy to turn it into a positive and accomplish my goals. Our community needs skateboarding because skateboarding gave me a new family full of love, diversity, and acceptance.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Chris Firmage, and then after Chris, William Firmage.
Greetings, Mayor, council members, and staff. It would be awesome for Victorville and the Victor Valley to have an amazing skate park for the action sports community to be able to go and enjoy their passion and hobby. No better time to build a skate park since the funds are coming from a California Park grant that's for upgrading existing parks. Since BMX freestyle and skateboarding are now considered Olympic sports, it will be in the Summer Olympics this year in Tokyo. Seems like no better time for Victorville to move forward with building a BMX skate park. For the youth who aspire to one day be in the Olympics, and they can have a place to go, and also for everyone else of all ages to go and enjoy with their friends and family. Thank you.
Thank you. William?
Hello, Madam Mayor. William Firmage, Apple Valley. My pen stopped working, so my paper's not too great here. I just wanted to say, when I was 15 years old in 1979, I got my first Mongoose bicycle, and I was from a divorced family, and I got on that bicycle, and I started riding it, and I became the best there was in Downey, California, and I went on to be the original Vans member in 1982, where I toured all over. And I just wanted to say, these kids, for over 15 years, we've been asking Victorville for this, and Apple Valley has a park, Hesperia, Wrightwood, Lucerne, Barstow, Adelanto, and now we're waiting for Victorville, and we think Victorville's will be the better than all of them because of the money you guys are putting out for it. So people will be coming to your town to spend their money, not those little bitty skate parks around the other part of the high desert. And I'd like to applaud the staff and the city council for all the hard work it took to get this done. So I know it's a lot of work and drawing up plans and everybody's time that's involved. And I want to say kids just want a place to belong. That little broken down parking lot on 7th Street by the donut shop, that's starting to get homeless people living there. And that's the Victorville skate park at the moment, that little broken down parking lot that you see along 7th Street. And I'd like to also say kids that do bicycle riding, that are going to use the skate park, and skateboarders, they learn to pick up tools and work on their bicycles and their skateboards. And most kids today are stuck on their phones and their video games. So the kids that do these sports, or most of them are from broken homes that ain't got little league involvement, soccer and all that. They're like, bye, Mom, going to the park, if their mom's even home. So they go to these parks to have a place to belong. And I was going to say, don't be like the Compton, like you've seen on the news over the past few months, where the Compton City Council is like fighting against each other because they want to block each other's projects. You guys all need to get on board and get this done for these kids. And I see some other, I'd like to end with this. I see some other people on the council here, and someone that ain't here tonight, that's running for higher office. On my ballot, I see their names on the ballot. And I'd like to say, you got to get these little things done before you can move on to the big things. Thank you.
Lexton Butler.
Good evening. My name is Langston Butler, and I'm 17 years old. I moved in Victorville in 8th grade from South Central LA, and was surprised to hear there's no skate park. And I believe we need this skate park in Victorville because it will help better the community and give the kids a place to go versus being inside playing video games all day. Yes, I know you're probably thinking there's Lime Street in Hesperia, Apple Valley in Adelanto, but not everyone has a car to drive 11 miles to ride a park. And not everyone has $1.25 to take the bus there and back home. Me and my group of friends specifically hit a lot of what we call in the action sports community street spots, but thing is, we get kicked out by security or police 100% of the time, guaranteed. And we're tired of not having a place in our own city to skate at. It's disappointing because we're one of the only cities in the high desert without one, and this is something Victorville absolutely needs. Not new fast food places to make people fat. The city of Adelanto has a skate park, and they have less money than the city of Victorville. We need a skate park for the youth of Victorville. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were all the cards that I had. Okay, I do not have any other cards. Is there any over there? No.
Good evening, Council. Before I'd like to begin, I'd like to say thank you for even considering such a project for the city of Victorville. I know the youth in this city specifically is, I would say, in a way, misguided by what they see on the streets. It's not the best thing to look at, and I think that with a new skate park, it would give kids, the youth around here, a new outlook on life, because that's what it's given me. Skateboarding is an art form, and I know art can't be understood by everybody. It's a form of expression. It's given me a voice that I didn't have growing up as a kid. It's giving me, I guess you can say, myself. I found myself with skateboarding. I didn't know who I was before it. Councilmember Gomez, I played soccer growing up, and I loved it. But at times it was very, very discouraging and heartbreaking. With skateboarding, it was uplifting and, it was therapeutic. It helped me to express myself on the skateboard. Not everybody skates the same, and not everybody will, and that gives these kids their individuality that in this day and age a lot of people lack. There's a lot of yes men in this day and age, and with skateboarding, it gives you the voice that we all need and that we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I close the public hearing. And I need a motion and a second for this item.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council take action in accordance with the recommendations set out on the agenda.
And I'm going to make a substitute motion to postpone. We're missing our colleague who is very critical about our youth, and she's not here today.
Is there a second? There be no second, that motion dies.
Second, Councilmember Jones's motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. Any further comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I am so very proud of the turnout tonight. It speaks volumes about what our community wants. Very proud to see Mr. Castaneda here. Had no idea you were coming, and he's responsible actually for me learning a lot about skateboarding. I have a son with special needs, and anything athletic he would run from, but skateboarding he was good at. And it built confidence in him, and I was able to drive him to Volcom Park in Costa Mesa, and it was worth it to me from my son to gain that confidence in an ability that he just felt so different from everyone else. So as we've heard tonight, the skate park project has been years in the making. On May 15, 2018, the council, with all members present, voted unanimously to expand the size of the skate park from what was originally planned. 6 months later, on November 2018, and because of a potential bid protest, the council approved a motion moved by Mayor Pro Tem Cox and seconded by Mayor Garcia to, number 1, reject all bids received and open for this project, and number 2, direct staff to re-advertise 2 separate projects, the skate park in Doris Davies Park and the Doris Davies Park improvements. Tonight, we decide whether CS Legacy Construction is to be awarded the contract so that this project can finally move forward. There has been much deliberation and challenging work. That hard work came at the consistent and repeated direction of multiple councils. Let's remember the countless hours staff has invested toward bringing us to this very moment. Let's also recall that monies were appropriated for this project nearly 2 years ago in May 2018, and no further appropriation would be required with the passing of this motion. 3 things stand out to me. We know it has been 10 years since recreation DIF monies were spent to add or improve parks. 2, we know after this project there would remain a substantial cash fund balance to focus on CSAC projects it may identify in its upcoming master plan. And 3, the consistent will of several councils has been that Victorville should have a skate park. I have heard nothing that would cause me to doubt the thoroughness of staff's due diligence, and the competence of this company to faithfully execute the city's vision for its first skate park in Victorville. In my view, absent demonstrable evidence that CS Legacy Construction cannot perform adequately or that the bid is not competitive and responsible, there is no reason to reject staff's recommendation on this item. I look forward to a skate park, the first skate park of many, I hope, in Victorville. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I do. So if you see an empty seat, my colleague, Mayor Pro Temp Rita Ramirez, has been these last few months in very, very critical conditions. She's very passionate about the youth. She's very involved, especially in the Parks and Recs division, where this is where it would fall in. The city of Victorville has gone on a venture implementing for the first time in its history a citywide master plan. It's a historic event for this city that has uptaken, not only for a citywide, but definitely for our Parks and Rec. Greenplay is a consultant who is working with a master plan for Parks and Recs division. And they're using systems such as the Likert surveys, focus groups, key stakeholders, and stake seekers as being part of who's being interviewed to bring a recommendation to this council to ensure that every single youth in the city of Victorville has a voice heard. It would be wise for this council to consider tempering the priorities of every single youth member in the city of Victorville in order of placement to give input to Greenplay. A decision like this would not only reflect the overall democratic process that we stand by our constitutional right and our constitution that each one of us took, but it would also reflect the needs of our constituency who are at the least disadvantaged. This is not to demean any of the youth that are here, but it's to celebrate why democracy and why we have been elected and why we advocate for benefiting, once again, the least disadvantaged communities with Parks and Recs. Greenplay consultant, his name is Dan, and if you have a pen and you'd like to write this down, he can be contacted at this phone number. His phone number is 573-0749. I will repeat it again. Dan's number, who works for a consulting company, his Greenplay, its number is 801-573-0749. He has an email that you can also contact him for that master plan. It's Dan's, plural, so it's Dan's, D-A-N-S, at greenplayllc.com, because democracy is why we are here. Every word and every person should be heard, not only specific people, but all of us. That's why I'm here. I want to be heard too. Sometimes people want to shut me up, but you know what? That's why we vote. That's why we have a democratic process, because everyone feels that we all have the right to say something. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying today, because I wanted to open up to everyone that's here that doesn't know master plan is coming. Parks and Rec is right down the line. You need to be involved, not only one day. It's more than one day. We need to be involved every single day. These decisions right here are power plays and they're political plays. That's all they are. Turn around and see who the head of it was. And all I'm saying is they shouldn't be political. That's why we have a master plan. Let's start accessing that. I've been giving a lot of people the phone number and the email address because we're all inclusive. We need to market this a little bit more rather than just these meetings. That's why we have that. It is what it is.
Please.
It is what it is. Yes, a master plan, absolutely. When my time is up, I'll definitely be quiet, but a master plan is a Parks and Rec decision of all the incoming influx of all your decisions for anything and everything you want under the sun, regardless of monies. They come in and they get recommended to council.
Madam Mayor, I'm going
and
to call for
council
the
gets
orders
to
of the
put
day, please.
No, I have 3 minutes, remember? You can't be taking my time. I don't take your time.
I'm asking.
So anyways, if
then
my
I make
time
a
is
point
up,
of
please
order.
let me
This
know.
item has
If not, let
strayed
me know how
from the
much money I
motion.
have.
The discussion
Okay,
has
so I
strayed
still
from
have-
the pending motion.
So, like I said, a master plan is for you to input.
Madam Mayor,
I
is my
input.
point
We
well
all
taken.
input, okay? That's why you have to contact the way that we're going to do this. You come up here and say it's rude, but you don't watch what she says, do you? That's why it's very selective. And green
Madam Mayor, I
play
ask
is
that you
very
would bring the
important
member to
for
order.
here, what we're doing. Green play is the way we go. Why are we spending money? We're spending over 50 grand on the input. That's why we're all here, and all I'm doing is educating you on the items. Be quiet.
I will have some people remove themselves if they don't settle down. Okay, we will continue here.
Madam
No,
Mayor,
you were rude. You took my time, but when I took yours, you didn't want it, did you? It's not fair game.
You have 30 seconds.
thank you very much.
They're not
Madam
your
Clerk.
30 seconds. They were my 30 seconds.
Madam Mayor, I believe I have the floor.
5-minute recess. 5-minute recess.
Exactly. That's why you vote.
Please take your seats. Okay, we are back now. So everyone has spoken except me.
Oh, but Madam, go ahead. But I did have some follow-on comments if I had time, but certainly I defer, of course.
I have time.
I just didn't, now that I've learned that you want to speak, I'm happy to wait. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, first of all, I believe that there's a time constraints on this bid, and I believe today was the drop dead date as far as meetings go for that. Am I correct? Yes. Okay. And then the other thing is, yes, we are in a democracy and majority rules. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I have nothing against skate parks. I have nothing against any sport whatsoever. So please understand that. But I also have a commitment and a responsibility to our residents. And I've had quite a few people come to my place of business to voice their concerns. And at this moment, I'm not sure which way I'm going with it. I understand that we need a skate park. Maybe the location is not correct, but we do have a master plan that will be presented in the very near future. So, like I said, at this time, I am concerned about our residents, and I also understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones and a second by Councilmember Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
That motion fails.
So tie votes are considered lost motions that can be brought back, but I don't know. We have time. Well,
You weren't granted the floor. You're speaking out of turn.
Do we bring it back, or?
Well, you have to agendize it again. It's a failed motion right now, so it is not approved. And I believe that, I'm not sure if we can bring this bid back, given the time constraints.
Okay, we will continue on. Item number 3. Madam Clerk, item 3, is
Yes.
that where I'm at?
Yes.
Okay. Doris Davies Park Amenities Project, award of construction contract. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation. I don't know if we need to continue with number 3 since the first one.
Yeah, it was a separate project. That the City Council approve the notice of exemption for the Doris Davies Park Amenities Project, appropriate additional funds for rec diff in the amount of $652,466.59, award a construction contract to California Landscape and Design Incorporated for the Doris Davies Park Amenities Project in the amount of $412,457.50.
Thank you. Council members, questions of staff at this time?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jay.
Item 3 is tied to the skate park. Staff, does that item 3 include just the landscaping, or is it parking lot and the restroom facilities?
That is correct.
It's answered, but I don't know that everybody has. I'll just go ahead and read it. The base bid was $372,000. Skate park lighting $39,000. 2 restrooms $217,000. Material testing $31,000 for a total of $660,000. We obviously need the restrooms, but we don't need the other things. And this bid wasn't made up in pieces. It's a one bid. I don't know at this point which way we go. We're not going to have, if we're going to bring the skate park back, and I don't know if that can be done. We certainly would need this, but if we're not, then we no need to even award the bid because we don't need it. So I'm at a loss at which the next step is. So staff and attorney, please step in and advise the council.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this item is really a direct byproduct of the skateboard park itself. All of these amenities were driven largely by the survey results identified by the residents to where these were intended to enhance the skateboard park project. Absent the skateboard park project, I'm not exactly sure that purpose to build these improvements is still there.
Well, I'm not even sure the council's in the position to approve number 3 at this point.
I would assume, since it's very much tied, and I believe some of those improvements are directly tied to the skate park, such as the lighting, that it would probably be appropriate to continue this item at least until you decide what you want to do on the skate park. With respect to the skate park, you've previously authorized proceeding with it. What you did tonight was not authorize the construction contract, so you've put staff in a little bit of a difficult position in terms of when and how we bring this item back. And I would assume that staff's recommendation would be to bring this item back at the same time as the skate park, since I'm not sure they can, or it makes sense to do these types of improvements without the skate park being there.
I have a question, Madam Mayor, may I? Yes. Well, I'm sure that there's a deadline associated with this bid as there was for CS Legacy Construction. So I don't know that. I think a lot that bringing it back is going to be timely because on item 2 we had a tie vote that was a lost motion. It can be brought back at the will of the council. I certainly would like to see some demonstrable evidence as to why that the bid wasn't granted to that particular bidder, because that's all we were addressing tonight. But I don't even know that we can bring this back because we're going to have to deal with casting bids again, I suppose. Calling for bids again. And I don't know if we're going to get anybody responding to that because we're kind of unreliable at this point. As far as I'm concerned, this is that will be the third go-round.
Is staff going to answer that? Because I was waiting for a question, so I presume that was a lengthy question. So I'd like the response to it.
As do I.
Well, as to the deadline, I don't know what the deadlines are. John, can you share with us whether or not we've got deadlines as to how good these bids are, or how long these goods are bid, how long these bids are good for? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. As you know, we did inquire originally about the extension for the skate park for CS Legacy, and that the deadline was tonight. There is an option for us. We can go and ask for an extension if that's possible. We do have another 30 days for the park amenities part of it.
So, I mean, I think I can certainly wait until we request agenda items, but I will certainly be requesting a special meeting so that we can find, based on the fact that we might be able to get an extension, but I would certainly be looking for demonstrable evidence as to why this bid was declined, because the decision to have skate park had already been made.
So, hearing that the skateboard project has bids that don't survive tonight, notwithstanding the fact that the bids have a continued life for this particular item, which is the amenities, at this point, notwithstanding the amenities having life in terms of the bid results, staff hasn't heard enough to be able to believe that there is an appetite to bring this item back. That notwithstanding, even if there was, I think to answer your question, I think there would be a concern. I, as a contractor, would question whether or not I want to continue to bid on projects that have now gone through 2 exercises with no decision. I mean, there's a lot of time. We talked about the time and energy of staff that went into this project, but there's also a considerable amount of time that you ask contractors to put into and actually expose them to the risk associated with the cost of putting together a bid that may not be won. In this particular case, you have bids that have no reason from a technical perspective to be rejected. Got contractors that do it 2 times. Question of whether or not they do it a 3rd time. I think you start experiencing what's considered reputational risk in the bidding community, and I think it does become more difficult potentially. And I think that has a likelihood of, if you do go back as a council and want to rebid this project, it's very likely that there's going to be a larger risk factor built into those costs, and it might cost you dramatically more than certainly what you were dealing with tonight.
Madam Mayor, there's a scheduled public hearing. We have yet to reach the item where we can schedule meetings. There's going to be a request, as Ms. Jones pointed out, to bring it back. In the meantime, we have a public hearing. I recommend at this time that we have the public hearing. I don't think we can award it, but I think that we can continue it. If we don't bring the other back, this dies on its own. If we do bring the other back, just a suggestion.
So I would like to have the opportunity to also do questions. I don't know if Ms. Jones would continue or Mr. Cox are going to continue, but I know you have a limit of 3 minutes. I don't want to partake any of your time.
I'm sorry.
We have 3 minutes to ask questions, and you and Jones have been asking.
I don't have any questions on this at this time. I think it all depends upon whether or not the council will agree to bring the original back, and by the time we bring it back, it would require a regular meeting or a special meeting, and in the meantime, staff would have to inquire as to whether or not the original people who submitted the bids for the skate park were willing to extend them. If not, the whole thing's dead. If they do, then the council then can hear it and this at the same time. But I think our hands are kind of tied right now.
So what is the response to your question, Mr. Cox? Because I don't hear staff responding to it.
Well, my suggestion is that we go ahead and have the public hearing. It has been published. There are people here. I think we have the responsibility to have the public hearing. And then it's going to, hopefully, the council will continue it until we final determination on item number 2. It will take care of itself. If the council agrees to have another discussion, whether it's a special meeting or the regular meeting, or continued
You have
meeting.
30 seconds.
Then at that point in time, staff will have to go back to the bidders on the skate park. If they will not continue, if they won't hold their bid in place, it's dead. If they will, then the matter can be brought back if the council agrees to discuss it, and this will be discussed at the same time. I would certainly hope the council wouldn't turn this down and then find that the other details have worked out on the park. I think that's the option that this
Your
council
time is up.
So you would like to have this agendized for after we find out if they will extend contract?
Well, if I understand the rules and we're trying to follow them, the skate park wasn't disapproved. It was not approved. In other words, the motion to approve failed. So it's still setting. That means that the motion that some council member may want to bring it back for further discussion would be proper. If there are 3 votes to do that, it will be discussed. If they're not, then it's just dead. And this is contingent, this is directly related to that motion. But that motion would be out of order because we have to wait until the period of time that we can bring back items at the end of the meeting. So, but we do have a public hearing scheduled, and that should continue. Am I correct, Mr. Attorney?
That would be an appropriate way to do it. You'd have a public hearing, and in order to avoid re-noticing the public hearing, it would be appropriate to have any people speak and then continue the public hearing if that's council's desire.
My understanding would be until such time that the council would hear item 2 again, either a special or regular meeting, presuming we can get an extension on time.
Correct. And item 2, the problem is you have a failed motion, and there's a prohibition on bringing failed motions back unless you suspend the rules.
Actually, no. On page 23 under tie votes, which is what this was, tie votes will be lost motions and may be reconsidered at a subsequent meeting upon a motion passed by the council to reconsider the item at a subsequent meeting.
I stand corrected.
So
You're right.
this
This is
one
a tie
would not
vote.
need a suspension of the rules.
I stand corrected. You're correct.
But at this time,
So you're still at questions of council members of staff at this point, but after that is completed, then I would recommend opening the public hearing on this item, and then the council can consider if they want to take action. The recommendation of Mr. Cox, I think, makes sense to continue this.
So I also have, yes. So this, clearly we had people that wanted the skate park right now and right then, right? And if that's the case, I don't understand why we have to postpone this. I don't see the issue. I mean, we're already talking about getting the skate park, so why not do the first phase, which is add the lighting, add the bathrooms, add everything, right? So when you come again, we've already established that piece and we could move forth. That would be my suggestion. Why? Because everybody was here clapping very loudly saying we want the skate park. So if that part of it didn't function for today, but this part for your lighting and for your bathrooms to be in play, I think we should advocate for that right now to pass. There's no need to bifurcate like we have. Bifurcation means we set up 2 specific pieces. So I would go ahead with the recommendation that we have on right now, which is staff recommends the City of Victorville to approve the notice of exemption for the Davis Doris Parks amenity project, appropriate additional funds to the recreational DIF in the amount of $652,466.59, and award a construction contract to California Landscape and Design for the Davis Doris Park Amenities Project in the amount of $412,457.50. That's what I would say. If this council is saying that we're going to go that way, this is the way we're going to push, and it's not going to fall away on the next side. Wouldn't you agree? I would. We have a plan no longer than 8 to 10 months. You're going to input. You're going to give green play consultation. Call them up and let them know, and that becomes, and it comes part here again, and then we vote on that. That's where where you need people advocating for that too, because it's not lost. That's why I said democracy works in miraculous ways. You guys stayed here. You have the opportunity right now. I don't see why we would let this part lose, because it's already going to be in play. It's going to be working. That's my opinion.
Madam Mayor, may I'm just I just don't see the logic in that at all. I don't know. I mean, we have to have the public hearing, but I don't know why we would approve anything like that contingent upon having a skate park when we just threw out our bidder on it. I mean, that just defies reason to me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Time to open the public hearing, I believe.
At this time, I open the public hearing. I do have one card. I think it's Rachel. I'm having a hard time reading what they're writing this evening.
Oh, hi, everyone. I guess I didn't realize that this would be such an emotional topic. In terms of the bid, listening to everything with the politics going on, it would definitely be really ideal if the motion can be brought up again to keep that bid for the skate park. If that's going to expire, then if it can be brought up again at the end of the meeting, we should definitely try to do that. Ms. Mayor, I don't know if you're concerned about like residents, if you're concerned about voters, you know what I mean? But I think, like if you saw like those kids, like that walked out the way they did, you have to acknowledge that, you guys letting that bid die in the way that you're doing it is letting them know that their lives don't matter. I don't know his name, I'm sorry to say, but the boy who talked about his friend getting hit by a car and dying, and said if we have a skate park, my friend maybe wouldn't have died, or let's build a skate park so more people's friends don't die. It's like, I get the money, I get the politics, I get the logistics, it's a sad game, politics is sometimes, it's a sad game. But sometimes we have to think beyond voters, we have to think beyond power, we have to think beyond our seats, we have to think beyond, you know what I mean? And really think about, when we're saying that our lives are dependent on it and things, it sucks, the bureaucracy and the red tape that comes around things like this. I've been in organizing, I've been in politics, I've been in policy since I was 18. I've been around it for a very long time. I'm not just speaking, I understand, the passion and the hours that go into it beyond these meetings, you know what I mean, in terms of wanting to make change in the community. So, again, no disrespect. I've been up here for national monuments. I've been up here in front of you guys for national monuments. I've been up here in front of you guys for stuff for Old Town. I've been up here, for multiple things, and it's not because I don't stick with one thing, you know what I mean? It's because there are so many issues, that our community needs. But if it's just money, if it's just red tape, if it's just bureaucracy, if this is millions of dollars that's going to die and we can't get back, please reconsider at least trying to keep it somehow, and then we can figure out all the other things. But you please take into account, letting what it means to let something like this die. I don't know how we're going to let them know, that their lives matter. I don't know how we're going to let him know that his friend's life matters, but we have to figure it out somehow. I hate to be so dramatic about it, but sometimes things really are that dramatic, Thank you.
William Firmage.
William Firmage, Apple Valley. This has been over 15 years or more in the making. It was like over 15 years ago when we started getting Apple Valley on board with it. And I know Victorville, over the years, you'll get council members, yes, we're for it. Then it drags on. There's another election. New members come in. Now we're not for it. Another cycle comes around. We're for it. We're back and forth. And I look at this as like Compton politics. It's what's going on here because there's people for it. How could you not be something that's for kids? And I know she's saying that it's, we got soccer fields. We already have soccer fields, baseball fields. No skate park, an empty broken down lot over there by the donut shop. Kids hanging out at the mall, getting chased by security because they ain't got a place to go. If you want to decide over the lighting or the park, why not put the lighting on hold in the restrooms, get the skate park done first, and that stuff can come later. I just don't know what the holdup is. The Daily Press is going to write a story about this. It's going to be laughable because it is laughable at this point.
Carino. Perino Solario.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. Very happy to be here today talking about this matter. I want to talk on behalf of the youth a little bit, since they're not here to speak for themselves. I have a daughter that's 3 years old, and
Are you speaking on the park issue, or is this for public comments?
I'm sorry?
Are you speaking on the park,
On both.
or did you want to wait until public comments?
The public comments? No, I'll speak on it right now.
Is it about the skate park?
Right.
That's the agenda item.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so the majority of the youth is not here to talk about it, but as older adults that have gone and lived and felt the passion about skateboarding, we're here, and that's the reason that brings me here today. The amenities would need to be with the skate park, of course, because then where would everybody go? I believe the skate park is needed within the community for all the youth, regardless of the youth that they don't know what they're going to do in life, because I'm 30 years old and I still don't know what I'm going to do with life. But I know if I have a skate park, I would go to it. I also know if I've never been around skateboarding, I don't know what I would have been doing with my life. I would have been definitely doing not the right things, I believe. I figured a way to express myself and find myself as a individual. And I believe everybody finds themselves that way. And it's crazy to think that this thing that we're so passionate about that brings people together from all around the world. And I believe there's like 3 professional skateboarders that come from the Victorville area, and there's no skate park here. And somehow they still made it. So I want to thank you guys for your time, and I hope you guys reconsider the number 2 and 3, because without 2 there shouldn't be a 3. Thank you.
I do not have any other speaker cards. I close the public hearing.
You may want to consider continuing it, depending on what you do on item number 2, as opposed to closing it, so we would not have to renotice it.
Okay, we will continue it.
Well, it's up to the council to do that.
If council,
I'm going to make a motion to go as follows for this item and continue with this for today's vote as recommended by staff, which was what I already read to the public.
so we will continue it to.
That's a motion. So actually, I'm going to second that for purposes of discussion.
I have not made that motion. I can't make
I
motions.
made the motion and Ms. Jones seconded it.
Your motion was to continue?
For purposes of discussion. No,
Or-
her motion, Councilmember Gomez's motion is to approve item 3 in accordance with the recommendation on the agenda. So I seconded that for purposes of discussion. Madam Mayor, may I?
So you're actually seconding?
I seconded the motion.
Request clarification, Madam Mayor.
I believe we have a motion by Councilmember Gomez to consider this item this evening and to approve this item based on staff's recommendation, and we have a second from Councilmember Jones to discuss this matter.
Well, that's 2 different motions.
No, it's a motion and a second. The motion right now on the floor.
Not to approve it, just discuss it.
No, the motion right now is to approve it, I believe. The second is to approve it.
Discuss it. Okay, and discuss it.
Is to approve it, and I've made the second for purposes of discussion.
Okay, I still have a question. If Councilmember Gomez is inclined to approve this, then it appears that she's sending a message that she's inclined to approve the skateboard park. I realize that there's a master plan coming and can we wait, but with all of the bids that are out there, unless I misunderstood, there seemed to be, if we'll just wait, it will be approved, so let's go ahead with this. Well, if it's going to be approved anyway, can there be a motion to reconsider this item 2 and just approve it and get it out of the way?
Are you talking about item number 2?
Yes,
Yes, I would concur.
that's a question.
You can have a motion to reconsider since it's still at the same meeting. It needs to be made by somebody that voted in favor of it. So Mr. Cox could make a motion
But
to
when can
reconsider
that motion be made?
Well, I would do it probably right after this item has been completed, although given that item 3 is contingent on number 2, you could probably consider it at this point if the council, if the mayor's willing to sort of bend the rules a little bit. It would seem to make logical sense to do it that way.
Okay, so I need clarification now. So item 2 is what didn't go through. Item 3 is what is our discussion. Item 3 was motioned and seconded, but now Mr. Cox is bringing something to reconsider, a former that didn't happen to come about. Is that what's happening? Is that the clarification?
Well, that's the question. If it seems to me that if we are going to want to approve item 3, you would do that only knowing that you're going to approve item 2. I don't think that we are in a position to consider expending $660,000 unless we're in favor of item 2.
Well, I thought we had $6.6 million. So then we don't have it.
The current cash balance is that has nothing to do with the current cash balance. This here is a $652,000 additional funds for the recreation different amount. Well, whatever the amount is for item number 3, you wouldn't spend it unless you were going to have skate park.
But I think we would, because if the amenities were already needed, like for the parks, encumbered balance we don't have on anything. It was just on Sunset Ridge Park. So you would be beautifying another park. Yes, I am making sense of it, because if you hold this, you're going to get essentially what you want. But if you think it doesn't make sense, you should be seated right here. You know what I'm saying?
Madam Mayor, please take charge of the meeting.
Hey, I'm going to ask you to remove yourself if you continue.
I believe it's reasonable to, if you approve the park, to approve this. But if you didn't approve the park, this wouldn't make any sense. It really would. If it's uncertain, then you would continue this. But on the other hand, if it's uncertain, but the discussion seems to be, once we go through a period of time, once we get a master plan, then we're going to approve the park. Why not do it now when we have the bids and not have to rebid and spend all the money and take a chance?
Why? Because we have a master plan. Because we need the people to input. We have 130,000 people. You are not 130,000. You're not 130,000.
Please. I am going to have some people removed from here if we don't have order, please. It's bad enough that it's taken us this long to figure out what we're going to do here.
I'm not the mayor pro tem, but folks, bear with us because you're trying to talk me out of this, and I wish you wouldn't do that. So if you just be calm, let us talk about this. I want to make a statement with the council's permission. One of the worst things that can happen is for a past council to make a decision, and then when the next council comes in to try to tear down everything the past council did. That's what we see in Sacramento. That's what we see in Washington, D.C. It's a horrible thing to do. We're not political, so we shouldn't be doing that. But one of the things that we have, and I'm sorry for this speech, but it's very important to me, we are supposed to work together as a team. And one of the things that we have in an ethics class that we're all required to take is that even if we vote no on an item, if the city council votes yes, we then should, if we're ethical, support that, even if we opposed it. When the skate park came up, I asked for additional swimming pool and a wading pool. It didn't get it. And I said, I'm not for it until we get the other things. But the council approved it. I think the council spoke. And so I think all the members that are on the council have to support that. The worst thing that can happen to this council is to take any action and then after 2020 have a new council totally turn everything over. We have to be a team. We have to honor what the council did, assuming that they listened to the public and made good decisions at the time. And I don't want to take sides, but it's true. This decision has been made. It's a matter of just awarding it. That's the question tonight. And so to continue it and lose the bids and have people start all over again is going to be very costly to all the taxpayers and the ratepayers. If we have a mind, if we really believe that this is the best thing to have it, then we should approve it and go ahead and approve number 3. But if we're not going to have a reconsideration, if we're not going to approve it, then spending another, how much is item 3, what's going to cost staff? Just tell me how much is this going to cost, item 3.
Or 66.
Okay, it just doesn't make any sense to have $652,000 expended unless you know you're going to have the skate park. If you know you're going to have the skate park, don't lose the bids. Take advantage of it tonight. And that's why I'm asking that the council reconsider before we vote on number 3, if that's legal to do so.
I'd like to respond to that if I could. My understanding is on tie votes are lost motions, and so the item can be reconsidered with a majority vote of the council, but does not have to meet the rules for reconsideration, which means that you have to deal with the who, why, and when of it. We could simply take that up again tonight, and my understanding would be anyone could move that. So rules of consideration means it has to be why. You reconsider it because there's new information that wasn't available at the time, or to correct an inadvertent error. That would not apply. The who would be someone that voted in the affirmative. In this case, that would be backward. And the when of it would be during the same meeting. It would meet that criteria. But in my view, none of those apply because we're under the category of tie votes and being able to reconsider with a majority vote at council, not needing to meet the general rules of reconsideration for an item.
And it's my understanding that we should have had this discussion on item 2, not after. That's why that policy doesn't hold.
So I'd like to, and this might simplify it, I mean, we'll at least know where we stand. I'd like to make a substitute motion that we approve item 3 contingent upon our revisiting and approving item number 2.
Since it's contingent upon that, I would second that.
Yeah, like I said, we have a master plan and we still have input for the next 8 months. You're not giving a fair shake to the rest of the community. I don't see why, if all of these people that came in here today were to give that, I bet you that would be number 1. It would come here, flying colors, it would pass. Why? Because we're going to consider the top 5, and you've already been here. That's my prerogative, and that's the way I advocate for my community as a whole.
Madam Mayor.
So we need to.
Several councils have made decisions to approve a skate park. We have followed the course to this natural conclusion, which is to award a bid. This is not a night to reconsider or rehash anything. We haven't taken up argument again on whether we should have one. That decision was made. So effectively what happened tonight was we rejected the bidder without any demonstrable evidence as to why that bidder was rejected.
So there's a sub-motion, and I made a motion, so we need to vote because, I don't know, are we going to have further discussion? There's a subordinate motion. I've made a primary motion.
There's a substitute motion on the floor right now, which is to approve item 3 contingent on a subsequent approval of item number 2. That's the motion on the floor that has been seconded.
The reconsideration tonight and subsequent approval tonight of item 2.
There's another way to go back to item 2 and revote.
Yes.
That's all it is.
We're on number 3 now.
No, I have to take the vote. So I have the motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with Councilmember Gomez voting no and Councilmember Ramirez being absent. No.
That doesn't mean we have a skate park. All it means is going to be coming back and we'll have a third person to actually vote on it. We need to clarify what it means, because for her to clap, we are sending the wrong message to you. All it means is we're going to bring it back again and we're going to discuss it back again.
That is not correct.
That's all it means. Yes,
that
it
is not
does.
correct. It was contingent upon approval tonight of item 2. That got a 3-1 vote.
Mayor Garcia can rescind her vote right now and say no, just for you to know that. She can rescind and say, no, I changed my motion the other way. So you did that wrong. You're bringing foolishness here.
No,
That's not what the intent
Well,
was.
I would like the attorney's opinion.
Would you like to rescind your motion? Gloria, would you
vote
like to
has
rescind your
occurred.
motion? Okay, she
The
rescinds
vote
her motion.
has occurred. That is procedurally incorrect.
She can rescind her vote. We haven't gone
has
away
been
from here.
taken.
You
You
can
may not.
rescind it. So she's rescinding her vote. So you want to go ahead and take the
Mr.
votes again?
DeBernowski.
There was a motion on the floor. The motion was to consider item 3 and to approve item 3 contingent on subsequent approval of item number 2 at this meeting. And that was seconded, and that vote was approved on a 3-1 vote.
And continue. Because Gloria does not understand what just happened, so I'm explaining it. Because she clapped. I didn't understand it either until she clapped. So Gloria, under policy, has the right to rescind her vote and vote the other way, which means it failed.
You do have, Mayor Garcia, you do have the ability to bring a motion to reconsider that vote if you wanted to, but that would require a second and votes.
Second.
So now there is a motion on the floor to reconsider the vote on item number 2 and a second.
No.
I have a motion and a second to reconsider the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
All opposed?
No.
Motion fails.
She still rescinded her vote. She still rescinded her vote. The way we're doing it is really sneaky. The smart part of me is that I know how we play the game. So if we take this to judicial court, it stands that she can, based on policy, government code, she can rescind her vote immediately after. Unless we had gone to item number 4, she would not be able to go back. I have made that mistake, and the attorney has told me how to work it. So I learned, and I'm helping whatever we want to cause here as a group.
I believe
so
that
nobody's
actually is
going to do
correct.
that like this. Thank you, Mrs. Jones, for being integral. I actually appreciate that.
Did you rescind your vote?
I rescinded my vote because the way she
right.
explained it was not what I was voting for.
So item number 2 at this point has failed. It's on a 2-2 vote, as is item number 3.
And for clarification, and I was a little exuberant too quickly. The actual motion was contingent upon a subsequent vote on item 2.
Right.
So we still would have had to have taken the vote on item 2.
I appreciate that clarification. That brings
Of course.
integrity. Thank you.
Of course.
That was my intent.
It was approved in 2018.
So both, right now, items 2 and items 3 have failed.
So we continue on now? I move on to consent calendar. Consent calendar items 4 through 11 may be approved with one motion unless there is an item that needs to be brought forward for discussion.
Only item C7 I do have a comment on. It's my understanding that BVWRA is when I had a discussion, I went down there and kind of argued that I was being censured up here, and I voted no, and it says 4-0, so I'd like to see that clarification, please. I don't want it to go to show the other way, because I believe I voted no on that one. That's the clarification for that item alone.
Vote on that for her to...
No, it's a point of clarification, so we will check and see.
With the point of clarification and the change in the minutes and no other discussion, I move approval of the consent items.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Written communications, item 12. Annual financing reports from the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council and Board of Directors approve a motion to receive and file the following: City of Victorville Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. Independent Auditor's Report on Internal Control over Financial Reporting on Compliance and Other Matters based on Audit of Financial Statements. Performed in accordance with government auditing standards for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2019. Victorville Water District Basic Financial Statements for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2019. Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Basic Financial Statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. City of Victorville Single Audit Report on Federal Awards for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019.
Thank you. Council members, any questions of staff?
Yes. On this item, one of my constituents pointed to, I'm going to say it's not numerated. Okay, so I'm going to call it page 3 of the staffing report that follows with the agenda item. If you look at the last 2 and then the first paragraph of the following page, which I will call page 4, it talks about the SEC, the filings and the complaints, but it leaves a lot of information, in my opinion, that it should be garnered in this reporting. One of them is we don't have a figure of $19.6 million anywhere in this reporting, and I want to understand a little bit more of the staff's rationale as to its omittance.
Madam Mayor, City Council, although I do appreciate the question, we can get to that shortly, but we do have our auditor, Mr. Nitin Patel, who's here. He has a short presentation to discuss the audit firm's findings for the 1819 audit, and I'd like, if the council's okay with this, to hold the questions till the end, but allow him to, maybe he'll answer some of those questions with his presentation, if that's okay with the mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I do introduce Nitin Patel. He's a partner with White Nelson Dale Evans. This is their first year engagement of performing the audit for the City of Victorville and its component units. He has a short presentation, and then he and staff and myself are available to answer any questions after his presentation.
Good evening, Mayor. Again, Nitin Patel. I'm a partner with White Nelson Dale Evans, and I'm going to briefly present the results of our audit for the year ended June 30th, 2019. So first, I wanted to cover the scope of our services, which included our independent auditor's report on the comprehensive annual financial report, the report on internal control over financial reporting, single audit of federal grants, communication to those in charge of governance, and upcoming accounting pronouncements. So the scope of our services including providing an opinion on the financial statements of the city, also the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority. We provided a separate opinion on that, and also a separate opinion on the Victorville Water District. All the other 2 entities are included in your comprehensive annual financial report. In the independent auditor's report, we discussed that we've done the audit for the year ended June 30th, 2019. Management is responsible for the preparation of these financial statements. The auditor is responsible to express opinions on these financial statements. The standards require that the audit is planned and performed to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. The audit evidence we've obtained in our audit is sufficient for us to provide an opinion. We have issued unmodified opinions for June 30th, 2019. In other words, the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We had an emphasis of matter related to some restatements of fund balances and net position. There is a difference from the prior year that we did not have the continuing going concern related to the airport authority or related to pensions. The report also discusses required supplementary information, that we review that information for consistency but are not providing an information. There is supplementary information in the financial statements which provides more detailed information on the individual funds. We do give an in relation opinion on that. In other words, we are giving an opinion on that. And finally, the CAFR includes introductory and statistical section, and that's not given. We do not give an opinion on that because the statistical section is 10 years worth of data, and the introductory section is management's basic introduction to the financial statements. The report on internal control over financial reporting for an audit done in accordance with government audit standards is also referred to as a management letter. We did report 2 significant deficiencies. They were related to the year-end closing for audit adjustments and also to update the loan related to SCLAA. We also had an item of non-compliance that we reported to you related to reporting the annual progress report with the housing department. It was not done on a timely basis. We did complete our single audit of federal grants. We have issued an unmodified opinion on that. We did have one finding, and it had to relate it to non-compliance related to the uniform guidance procedures. We believe that you have to update your purchasing policy to meet those requirements. The major program we tested was the U.S. Department of Transportation FAA program related to the airport. Finally, the communication to those in charge of governance. The plan, scope, and timing of the audit was communicated to the city in a planning letter dated May 2nd, 2019. Management is responsible for the selection of the accounting policies, which are described in Note 1 to the financial statements. Management has selected and applied all significant accounting policies consistently. There are significant estimates that are reported in your financial statements. We encountered no significant difficulties during the audit. There were adjustments that we provided to the city, which are described in that letter. We did not have any disagreements with management. We did request that management give us representations related to the audit, and to our knowledge, we're not aware that the city consulted with any other accounts related to any accounting matters. And finally, upcoming pronouncements over the next 2 years are, next year will be the fiduciary activities. It will slightly impact your city, but the one that's in the following year, GASB 87 leases, I believe will have an impact, and it's primarily going to be related to the airport leases. That concludes my comments, and I'm going to stay around to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Council members, again, do you have any questions of staff at this time, or?
Yes, I do. By chance, when you were auditing this report for the coffers, you said you're privy to information, only the one that staff provides you. It's selective. You can't come in and select the information, or can you?
I don't understand.
As an auditor, do you have the ability to come into City Hall with our CFO and say, this is the information I want, or are you restrained and he provides you the information then that you audit, like
no,
a
we're
sample?
not restrained. The audit scope and plan is based on our judgment, so there are no restrictions on that.
So that means that you're allowed to get any information that you believe is important for the auditing, not what the CFO recommends.
That's
Just wondering.
correct.
So is that what
standards require that?
is that what you did in the city of Victorville?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you also look at the last auditing report by the last individual that we had that was an auditor?
Yes, we did.
So I'm concerned about the $6.6 million that was written off to the golf course. Was that a part of your discussion here? I don't see it in the first couple of pages, which is most important to the council members to read.
I'm not recalling the number that you're talking about. I'm sorry.
And I didn't have the opportunity to speak the last auditor. I wasn't given the opportunity because they were going to charge me because they were no longer auditors, so I was going to make sure I asked you. Another concern of mine is the ledging and the journaling of certain items that the city failed to ledge, and that was one of the ramifications and the warning that we should have documented, but we didn't. I had a very brief discussion with Mr. Harris. I'm sure he recalls that conversation.
I am not aware what you're speaking of.
So in the last auditing report, because I don't see this in this report, and it's contingent upon a trend that has been coming about since my tenure here, that I worry that what we're doing is we're failing to document certain checks that come in, whether it's oversight or what have you, and I don't see that here. So I'm presuming that you're taking the staff, so to speak, from when you came in. You're not looking at the last coffers. Is that correct?
We look at the previous CAFR, and to my recollection, I do not remember that comment in the report. It may have been in previous years. I just don't remember.
Yeah, it was last report when we did the coffers. Can you give me your phone number so I can
30
contact
seconds.
you and get that information?
Sure. It's 714-978-1300.
Could you go a little slower? I'm sorry, I'm writing it.
714-978-1300.
Thank you.
Unless there are any other questions, are there any other questions for Mr. Patel?
I have none.
Okay.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those were all the questions. Thank you. I do not have any speaker cards either. So at this time, I do need a motion in a second.
Receive and file.
Oh,
Do we need a motion
is
on
this
that?
the receive and file?
So move.
Motion to receive and file.
I like clarification on that. There's a couple of things that I remember in policy. We do receive and file, and we do make motions. Mr. Cox brought up a good point, because I would have thought to receive and file did not require a motion. But I need just clarification, because we're setting new trends, and I just want to be clear on these items.
I believe in the past you have actually asked for the requirement to have a motion to receive and file reports. So staff, in an abundance of caution, has decided to seek a motion and a second on filing and receiving of reports.
Thank you.
So we do need a motion?
Correct.
I thought Councilmember Cox made one, and I
made the
seconded
motion.
it. I seconded it already.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Item number 13, Community Services Advisory Committee appointment. The recommendation is at the discretion of the City Council. Council Gomez, you want to present this item?
Yes, so it's been a couple of times. Ramiro Rodriguez, who is outside, on several occasions I've asked to come forth and be able to be appointed. He wasn't in the past been able to be appointed or approved. So it's once again that I ask Ramiro. I know he's here, but he is the person that I've been trying to appoint to the Communities Department so that we can have more input with the Parks and Recs and those types of issues.
Did he submit a resume?
He has submitted one in the past.
But for this, on here.
It's been declined for him to continue to submit any type of information.
I'd like to hear from the city clerk. You declined to take a...
No, I didn't blame the city clerk. I'm sorry you took it for that interpretation. This council has numerously said no to him. So in order for that to occur, he doesn't need to have his resume. We all have his information already, and we know who he's about. But in my right to be able to appoint someone, I would continue to bring Ramiro. I haven't seen anyone else viable that has met the requirements in terms of appointing that individual that's very vested in our community.
Question, Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Just for clarification, we have continual statements about individual city councilmen appointing. My understanding is individual city council members nominate and the whole council must appoint. A council member cannot appoint. Is that true or not?
That is actually correct. Specifically, you actually amended your rules where the mayor has the ability to appoint, but everything is subject to a council vote.
So I don't know if I understand that. I think, like I said, we are setting new trends as the new council did come in. We're using terminology to say appoint rather than nominate, or nominate rather than appoint. We use that during the mayoral part, so I'm getting a little bit confused. So would you distinguish the difference if there's legalese in terms of that, or if that's just understandably interpretive based on one's understanding of these words?
Certainly. Essentially, the mayor is given the ability to make appointments, but what they typically have done is always at the discretion of the council is seek nominations from the various council members, and whichever way it ends up, it requires a vote of the council to confirm that position. So I believe, and I don't want to put words in Mayor Garcia's mouth, I believe she was allowing you to try and make a nomination. Again, that would be the appointment, and that would require a motion, second, and a vote.
Okay, so then instead of saying I would like to appoint, the language is
You would
Ms.
nominate-
Gomez should have said her intent today is to nominate Mr. Ramirez, who is here present. I got you.
Madam Mayor, I have a question of our attorney. So, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, this particular nominee, just a short while ago, was brought before the council, and the council did not appoint. That was the judgment of the council. To hear it again, in my view, we are at that point of meeting the rules for reconsideration.
Was it, well, I don't recall when the last time, council member.
Seems like
Gomez-
it was a month or two ago.
Was it the last meeting? I'm not sure.
No, it was several meetings ago.
Wasn't last meeting.
It's been, I think it's probably been, could be several months, I'm not sure. But the council would not, decided not to appoint that candidate.
If there was a formal motion, and I don't recall that meeting, if there was a formal motion that was seconded and voted upon and that motion failed, it would be inappropriate to bring that same motion back.
Thank you.
Okay, I love the game we're playing here because I just learn all day long. You know, let me use Mrs. Jones' rationale, which is what we use with the skate park, a motion to reconsider with a caveat of bringing Mr. Ramirez to nominate him to come back here because we are reconsidering something at this moment, and that would require a motion, a second, for discussion. This game is beautiful when I learn from all the best, and Mrs. Jones, I thank you for a lot of my learning skill set here. And so that's the same rationale I'm using, which is what we use for the skate park, which unfortunately was tricked, you know, into voting into something else. So that's what I'm doing right now today, so I appreciate it.
I understand. The distinction here is a motion to reconsider can be made by somebody that has approved or had voted in the affirmative on that prior action. What happened on item number 2 was it was a tie vote, which is treated differently than a failed motion. What occurred back when your prior nominee was voted on, that actually was a failed motion, different than a tie vote. It was not a tie vote. So the distinction is, which is in the policy manual, is how you treat a tie vote versus a failed motion versus a motion for reconsideration, which can occur at the same meeting, which would have been that prior meeting, and made by somebody that voted in the affirmative.
You
All
know,
those rules are set forth in the policy manual.
Mr. Dobranowski,
And
I
the council could
appreciate your
suspend it.
opinion. I do. And just to remind you, you had just stated publicly that you had not recalled and you did not know what the vote was, but all of a sudden, with the suggestion of Ms. Jones, you already know what the motion was and how it was voted. So, I mean, this is, again, we're playing a game. All I did is nominate Mr. Ramirez, and if the answer is no, let's move forward. We don't need to spend a lot of time here, and then we'll consider again and again and again, like I did for my planning commissioner. It took me 5 tries. So no big deal. So we'll keep looking, right? So I continue to nominate Mr. Molina, who is right here. The other constituents, I don't know if they're here. I've gone through their aspects. Last time I wasn't able to nominate anybody because no one was here.
About 30 seconds.
Thank you. That's it.
Oh, I have not heard a motion based on that, and a motion to...
Yeah, that was my motion that I had made for nomination.
That was a prior failed motion, I believe. I have to check with the city clerk, but I believe it was a failed motion previously, which should not be brought up at a subsequent meeting.
Well, unless you can verify it, I mean, we should go forth. That's why we have staff to give us the information to evidence what we're doing today, not to bring up biased, mere opinions. So if we don't have that evidence, I guess we're going at a clean slate. And if you approve or don't approve, that's what we're having at the table right now.
Assuming that is a motion, is there a second?
I'm not sure what it is, but I'm just wondering if we could confirm what the last vote was on Mr. Rodriguez.
It was a failed motion.
Can you provide that as an email format so I can have access to it? I'm sorry, I just don't trust staff anymore, and I haven't for the last almost 4 years. Thank you.
So apparently there's no additional... Do you have any other nominees?
I don't. None of them are here either, so we'll keep trying.
Well,
Yeah, we can continue and go forth again for the next agenda item.
So we're on item number 14 now?
Yeah.
Correct.
Authorizing resolution for California Department of Resources recycling and recovery payment programs. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council adopt Resolution Number 20-003, authorizing submittal of California Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery applications for payment programs and related authorizations.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time? Have anything?
No, thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
No, I don't have any questions.
And I do not have any speaker cards, therefore I need a motion in a second.
Madam Mayor, move that the City Council approve resolution number 20-003.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Item number 15, Regional Drainage Development Impact Fee Study Update, agreement with David Towson and Associates, Inc., DTA. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve a consultant professional services provider agreement by and between the City of Victorville and DTA in an amount not to exceed $60,060 for the Regional Drainage Development Impact Study Fee Study Update.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time from any
I do
council
have a
member?
question.
Yes,
Madam.
go ahead, Jim.
And I forgot to look at my bill. Isn't there a drainage fee of $4 on every bill that is submitted to the people in the city?
That's for operations and maintenance. This is dealing with the capital side to actually build facilities through the
So
DIF
currently,
program.
if we have an individual going to build a house or a subdivision, there's no building development fee for drainage?
Currently not for regional drainage, correct.
But there is for drainage.
There is an O&M fee that we collect from residents for the drainage system that we do have to still maintain.
Is this going to affect the $4 that's currently on the bills?
No,
So this would only affect new development.
this would be new development, correct.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Questions?
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, I have a question. So sewer synonymous with drainage? Yes or no?
No, two different systems.
Okay. So I heard this evening, and I learned for the first time that we have a public safety and a public transportation DIF fee. And so this is a new added one. Do we have any others, or is it just now regional drainage development impact fee?
This item would be a new fee for master drainage facilities. We're trying to do this in parallel with the updating that we're currently doing for all of the remaining development impact fees that we're currently analyzing. The goal would be to, instead of bring multiple approvals back to you, bring the citywide DIF study back along with this study at the same time, so we can deal with collective DIF all at once.
So, and I'm under the assumption that this is the first of its kind. I didn't see a survey, but you said a survey would be coming up. Where was it, Prop 218? I feel like the community might not have had a voice. I don't know if this is one where they do, because if a fee is implemented, doesn't the fee go to affect residential, industrial, commercial sites and all these parcels?
I think you're talking about a process that is unrelated to this. I think you're talking about a process that would be more appropriate dealing with the O&M associated with rates of a particular system. This is just deal with capital. We are required, obviously, to develop a master plan and make sure that the master plan has engineering estimates so that there is a nexus to the actual development impact fee being collected. We certainly can't be collecting more than what the designs call for, but I think you're actually mixing different types of rate approval processes.
Yeah, so I'm bringing them as analogies to make sure I'm understanding that this drainage fee, it doesn't have a dollar figure, I mean, in terms of per unit. So who is it affecting if it's not affecting our residents?
And that's what this study would establish, is the actual fee, and it would be applied, if approved by the council, by new development that builds in the city of Victorville.
Oh, okay, so just for clarification, now that you understand, I understand that this is not the fee that we're invoking already to mandate anyone to pay. This is just for the survey, and that's why I brought others thinking, where's the 218? So that's good clarification. Thank you. I understand now.
Anyone else? No?
Yes. I'm sorry. County of San Bernardino has a San Bernardino County Flood Control District. And at one time, they had a master drainage facility, and also it affected the city. I think there was District 5, Zone 5 maybe, was the Mojave River. Zone 4 was outside, which affected some of the city. Fees were collected. At one time, fees were allocated back to the city because we had the responsibility of building the drainage facilities that went into the Mojave River. Does the county flood control still exist? Do they collect money? Do they allocate it back to the city? And I don't have to do it now, but in this study, will they make sure to enumerate that, show the map, show the boundaries, and how much we receive annually? Don't have to be specific, but I just want to make sure that we're still doing that, that it hasn't been vacated.
The county flood control still collects property taxes. There's a property tax component. We're in the Zone 4, and so they have a 10-year plan. One of the projects that they funded was the Amethyst Detention Basin. Another project they funded was the Mojave River Levee in Old Town. So the flood control district will fund certain regional projects out of that funding source, but this fee study is separate and apart from the county flood control Zone 4 funds, but they still collect those and they still prioritize those funds for this area.
And I did come up with another question. I'm presuming based on the reporting that this is the first of its kind. Is that so? For Victorville? Is that a yes?
Well, I can provide a little clarification for that. We do have a development impact fee that was established that covers part of the city. It's I guess covers a portion of the city, you could say. That fee has not been updated for a very long time. This would be basically a new fee. It's a new study that covers the entire city, everything in the city limits, and it would be a more comprehensive list of projects. So in a sense, yes, it's a new fee.
How is this going to impact our community?
How would it impact the community? It would be a development impact fee, and if this fee were to be imposed, then all new development projects would be required to pay that as a condition of the new development.
There's more money on tax. I mean, it's the wording is off. This is going to come from the pockets of our consumers. Yes?
It would be borne by new development, whether it be residential, commercial, industrial.
So if I'm a developer, my cost is going to be a drainage fee, and I can pass it on to my renter, the property owner, et cetera, et cetera. That's all I'm getting to, which is typically what happens.
It would be a development impact
So I would
fee.
see this on my bill as a property owner, as a renter. I wouldn't?
No.
It would be normally reflected in the cost of the development itself.
Developer.
It'd be in the budget, the overall budget for their development.
Thank you.
And let's just be clear, once collected by the developer, once the fund got cash, the cash then has to be used to build regional drainage facilities. Absent the funding source, you don't have an ability to actually build appropriately the drainage facilities that are really necessary to properly convey stormwater in a storm event.
I don't know if I can answer that question. What are you asking? Why it wasn't
I feel
updated
like
earlier?
I should have, former councils should have caught that and it should have been voted. Now it should be just rudimentary. We've continued it procedurally.
I'm not really sure why the fee wasn't updated earlier, but Now we're taking all the development impact fees forward, and so this is just one more component of all the development impact fees that are being studied.
What prompted that? What was the origin of that? I'm trying to get just to the origin.
Well, under our city manager's leadership, we identified that we had a need to study our development impact fees and update them. Some of them haven't been updated for quite some time.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
Just from my understanding, the developer, of course, is the one that's going to be paying these fees. And then he will be charging, after they develop the homes, it'll be a part of the cost of the home. Would that be?
Yes,
That's the way it is collected?
Typically, that's
Yeah,
the case, yes.
That's the way they pass it on. It's not an individual fee over here, just part of the overall price of the homes.
Typically, that is how it works, yes.
Infrastructure and everything they pay, they lump it all into the price of the home, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I do not have any speaker cards. I need a motion and a second.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council take action in accordance with the recommendations set out on the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Item number 16, award of professional services agreement for sewer feasibility studies and sewer engineering services. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve a consultant professional services provider agreement with David Evans and Associates in the amount not to exceed $75,000 for sewer feasibility studies and sewer engineering services.
Thank you. Any questions of staff on this item?
I'd like,
Councilman?
I'm sorry, I did read the staff report, but do we have a plan now that's expiring or the time is up? Surely we have a plan for all of our sewers, as much as the millions that we spend annually and collect in regard to sewer fee and so on. I kind of the same question that Ms. Garcia or Gomez has. Why now? What prompted it?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is really a professional services contract intended to have a consultant, an engineer handy in the case there's a special project that requires it. Answering your question specifically about whether or not there's a plan, there is in fact a plan. We have a SSMP is what we typically refer to it as. That's our management plan for the sanitary sewer system. And that's our operating document as to how we operate and maintain the system. But this is more so related to a special project that comes along that requires special attention that's outside our ability, or perhaps our workload is such to where we really require outside expertise to help assess a certain sewer-related issue, such as whether or not there's sufficient capacity in a line to accommodate a certain development. And I think that's the other reason why this type of a contract is handy, is if there are special projects, new development projects that come in, it may be these types of contracts, these types of services that help us analyze independently whether or not our sewer system can handle certain types of discharges.
Else?
Yeah, I'm going to need clarification. I feel like some of these items that are popping up go back with BVWRA, go back to item C7, which is a consent calendar. We're talking about a sewer feasibility study, but yet I thought the council approved a schedule of fees for the sewer. I don't see them being unrelated. I see them very closely related, but if you can enlighten me and let me understand more.
Well, I think first it's probably fair to say that this is not directly related to VBWRA. This has more to do with our collection system and in determining whether or not there is ability within our collection system to handle certain flows. As far as rates, I mean, if there's a connection to rates. Rates fund your system requirements, your system needs, your expenses. So this would be an expense out of the sewer collection fund. So effectively, the rates would be contemplated as being used to fund this type of expense, along with many others that are realized when operating the system.
So did you say that this item is closely related to item C7, which is on our agenda tonight? That's what I understood, so I'm seeking clarification.
No, C7 was more so dealing with the pass-through of the Viva de Beret treatment, and that's a second reading for that rate increase unrelated to
For this sewer feasibility study, it's my understanding they said it's our plant with Snapple, and
this is more so focused on the collection system. Those are the actual pipes in the ground, and it's really intended to assess what's in the pipes, capacities, can they handle certain flows, can they handle new flows, do we have bottlenecks in our system that need to be addressed to where we maybe need to start planning bypasses, for lack of better terms.
so that our plant has a name. What's the name of it again?
Our plant is the IWWTP.
Which stands for?
Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Okay, that's the one I had a tour where you took me and we had to analyze the antibiotics or those little animals that you guys throw in there.
Bugs.
Okay, so that's the same relation. So then it's my understanding that that sewer only affects industrial. We mix in residential type of stuff, or just?
Our sewer plant is both an industrial and a domestic treatment facility.
Thank you. No further questions.
No. I do not have any speaker cards. I need a motion in a second.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Item 17, I-15 La Mesa Road, Nisqually. Road interchange final payment to San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council authorize the final payment to the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority for the city's share of the construction cost of the I-15 La Mesa Nisqually Road interchange in the amount of $1,903,000 or $3,187.93 from the Road Service Development Impact Fee Fund number 352.
Thank you. I like this item. Any questions of staff at this time?
Yes. So this is. So this is the final payment. It says this will
Yes.
be the final. Okay. So I thought I was under the assumption that we still had a long way to go. What was the total cost of this project, since 1.9 is roughly the end of paying this?
Well, I think that long time has come to today. The total project that we financed, Brian, can you recall it off the top of your head? Oh, it's in the staff report? Oh, good gosh. On page 608, we've identified $40.5 million was the total project cost, and our share that we are reimbursing SBCTA looks to be the $20.3 million figure.
So before I asked what the total cost was, I actually went over to my colleague. He'd mentioned it was 40.5, but he corrected himself and said no, because there was a portion. So my question again was, what's the total? Because I know there was a share. So what was our share, which is here, right? What's the total cost? Would it have been 40?
$40.5 million.
Okay. And they're just showing the shared staff as a portion of that piece.
Right, and the way this project was funded, similar to how we're dealing with the Green Tree project, there is a share eligible from CTA using Measure I funds, and then there's also a share identified as being responsible to be developer funded. And that's why DIF, and we've had a lot of conversation about DIF funds today, DIF is the required funding source to pay the city's share, basically, in this case. Now, at the time when we built this project, it's my understanding that there wasn't sufficient diff to pay for that developer share. And over time, over the time since it was built to today, we've accumulated, and you've annually seen items like this on the agenda where we've basically paid down that $20.3 million to what effectively is becoming zero after we approve this item tonight. But similar to what we've talked about with parks and master drainage, through development, through developers, these diffs get collected and then go to real capital projects, this being one. I think the exciting thing about this particular item is while we're able to pay this debt off, the bridge will effectively be free and clear. But as you can see in the staff report, we do talk about monies remaining in the diff fund, and effectively, as we continue to collect on new development that's currently taking place in Victorville, we'll actually be in a position now where we'll start amassing more development impact fees, and we'll actually be in a position to borrow less than what we've prescribed to borrow from SBCTA on the Green Tree Yucca-Loma project.
Thank you. No further questions.
Madam Mayor, I have a question, if I may. So I want to make sure I understand this correctly. This final payment that we're making, it really ends up being a wash because we're going to get the same amount back to us.
In the form of Measure I dollars, which would go likely to.
Right, so we're going to effectively credit cash in Fund 352 and debit cash in Fund 250.
I wish it was that simple, but SBCTA actually has to
Ultimately.
get paid. But yeah.
Ultimately, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I do not have any speaker cards. I need a motion and a second to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. Any further comments?
Yes, you know, I wasn't going to say anything, but I just love the fact that I learn all the time. I've used that word "so moved," and I've been just like hammered with the linguistic aspect of it. But when it's used, I'm not going to hammer because, you know, it's the way we communicate. But thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a comment. So the reason I said so moved was because the mayor invited a specific motion, and I moved that.
I have a motion
Madam
by
Mayor.
Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Item number 18, request to approve construction agreements for on-call emergency sewer lateral repair pipeline contractors under project CC 20-046. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve the construction agreements for an on-call emergency sewer lateral repairs with DDH Apple Valley Construction and Christensen Brothers General Engineering in the not-to-exceed amounts of $75,000 per contractor.
Thank you.
Question clarification.
Yes.
It's not unusual to have an individual or an alternate or two individuals in case one can't because of contracts or being busy. This can be read one of two ways. It can be read both of the individuals not to exceed $75,000 per contractor, or you can add for a total of $150,000. Is that correct? So it's not to exceed 75 each, so the total amount at risk is 150,000? 75? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I was thinking it was 75 total. Yeah. Any other questions?
Move approval, Madam Mayor, of the proposal for DDH and Christensen.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
Item number 19, presentation of IRS Internal Revenue Code Section 115, Post-Employment Benefits Trust. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council and Board of Directors adopt resolution number VWD 20-003, authorizing participation in the PARS Post-Employment Benefits Trust Program to be administered by Public Agency Retirement Services and U.S. Bank, appointing the Deputy City Manager, City Treasurer as the Victorville Water District's Plan Administrator, and authorizing the Deputy City Manager, City Treasurer to execute the documents to implement the program. Approve the Consultant Professional Services Provider Agreement with PARS for establishment of the Post-Employment Benefits Trust Program. Approve an initial deposit of $6,500,000 to the trust.
Thank you. I think I'm missing a page here.
No. You have 8?
But number 8 is any questions of council members of staff at this time?
Are we on 19?
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a question. Several things come to mind when I see GASP, which is the Government Accounting Standards Board. I think about the coffers in an auditing system. And then when I see the word OPEB, I'm thinking about the funding liability that we're like in steep dire to try to make amends meet. But then we're also talking about an RFQ or RFP. So all that put together, I mean, or building a program to pay off, doesn't seem like it. We're for whatever reason we're getting a proposal, but I'm not understanding, is it because we're going to start analyzing our liabilities and debts to pay them down, or?
If I may, Madam Mayor, City Council, I can probably summarize the action for you pretty quickly. This is an action to where we have historically been required as of, I want to say in the mid-2000s, to track and book our OPEB. OPEB stands for Other Pension and our Post-Employment Benefits, which is our medical retiree benefits that have already been granted to the employees. Specifically tonight, we're talking just about the water fund, because the water fund has the ability to pay the water district. We're not talking about the entire city, just the water fund. We have had to book that liability since GASB has required it. Currently, based on GASB, if we are not going to fund the program, there are certain actuarial factors that we must use. And those actuarial factors has a very modest discount rate that we can use in that actuarial to calculate the liability. Without funding it, that liability stands at about $9.1 million as a liability on our books, and that's what's currently booked on the water fund's balance sheet. If we do fund the program, and there's certain criteria required, if you are going to fund the program for GASB to acknowledge it as a funded program, one, it has to be in a irrevocable trust, and two, you have to fund according to the actuarial requirements of the standard. That by doing so, though, you can assume a higher discount rate. So once you apply that higher discount rate to the calculation, it actually yields a lower amount of liability, because it just assumes you can make more money on your money over the period of time, which requires you to put in less money to reach your ultimate goal. This action is one because the water fund can afford this particular liability, and we're not talking about pensions here, we're just talking about OPEB. This fund can afford its liability, and by simply establishing the trust and taking advantage of the higher discount rate per the standard, the total liability reduces from $9.1 million to $6.9 million. Staff's recommendation is that because it is in an irrevocable trust, that liability be funded to the tune of $6.5 million to determine how it performs over the next couple of years, and then balance on an annualized basis from thereafter. So the recommendation before you tonight is one, to adopt the trust program as provided by PARS, which is an agency that handles the trust and it works with a number of agencies across the state of California in doing just that. The only other bid that the only other player in this game as far as doing post OPEB trust is CalPERS, and CalPERS did not submit a response to our RFP. So that's why PARS was selected. And so the second part is to approve the agreement with PARS. The third part is to actually make the actual contribution to the trust, into the irrevocable trust, so that we can take advantage of, one, the investment performance provided by the fiscal managers at PARS, and to satisfy the requirement of funding the liability as required by GASB. If not, we would have to book the liability, so that's the offset. So it's either we don't fund and book a $9 million liability, or we do fund and we post a $6.5 million asset into this trust for the benefit of future employees. That $2.2 million difference remains now available for the water fund's balance sheet.
Okay, and that was going to be my question, because you said if we do get this there's a savings, we go from 9.1 to 6.9. You said there's like a 2.1 savings or whatever. But when I looked at the initial deposit of 6.5 million, I was like, well, where's the savings? Because is that a fee, or is that just something to maintain, to continue to build on?
That's our contribution to funding. So when we talk about funding a liability or not funding a liability, this is a recommendation for the city council to consider funding this liability that's out there. And if we actually fund it, what we must fund is lower than what we were required to book as a liability if we do not fund it.
What are the requirements?
We have to account for that liability.
And what is the requirement?
The requirement is to try to fund it as best you can. We have the ability actually to fund the entire amount. However, it is my recommendation to fund just shy of that amount, as it is a irrevocable trust. So once we put the money in there and it exceeds what the requirement is, the city cannot take that money back out for any other need. So I recommend that we were funded just slightly shy of the amount. And if the markets were to perform better than that 5.75 discount rate, then the fund will grow and meet the requirement or meet that liability at some point. If not, we'll evaluate it annually and make adjustments as necessary.
Okay, so to fund it fully is 1.9, but
fund it fully is 6.9 million.
6.9. So where does 9.1 to 6.9 come in as a savings?
It's now being able to recognize the difference between the discount rate for not funding the program and leveraging the discount rate and increased discount rate in the actuarial for funding the program. And so as attachments, you have two actuarial studies. One is performed in the event of not funding, and the other is the example that you would see on the unfunded or on the liability side if you actually were to recognize or a discount rate of 5.75%. And that's where you'll see the difference between the 9.1 million and the 6.9 million on those two studies.
So is an actuarial evaluation synonymous, even slightly similar to calling like an insurance, life insurance, so to speak?
Very similar. They use similar processes. And
then my last question is, GASB requiring or recommending, or you as a CFO requiring or recommending the Post-Employment Benefits Trust Program?
GASB requires that if you're going to have a bona fide funded program, that you use a sanctioned trust that is irrevocable.
Thank you. No further questions.
I have a question, Madam Mayor. So the amount of money that the water district will put up in the trust, it's the interest that reduces the liability? The interest gains? Because you don't put up 6.5 million and reduce your liability by only 2.2 million.
You do if you're allowed to calculate the new actuarial based on an improved discount rate. And so by funding the program and having money actually invested for the purpose of the beneficial users of the program, you can actually invest that money and assume a better discount rate. So when you now use that discount rate in the same actuarial That's how the improvement becomes from the 9.1 million, which if you're not going to fund, they require that you perform the calculation based on a lower, more modest discount rate closer to what you would expect from a money market account or something similar to our LAIF account.
Clearly I don't understand this, but I went from if the liability is 9.121 million.
Based on a lower discount rate, because that's the assumption that's made in the.
What is our total liability?
Our total liability as it stands now is 9.1 million, based on actuarial assumptions that assumes a lower discount rate because the money's not invested. We have to book the liability on our books. To arrive at the value of that liability, there's certain assumptions, and if you're not going to fund the liability, then the assumptions that you use have to be a modest discount rate.
The reason that I'm asking the question is because I'm on the board of another agency that has the requirement of OPEB of several million, and rather than reduce the amount, they put it up with an individual trustee for investment, and it's the interest and the gain that goes to reduce it, not the actual money. The amount of money they put up always remains the same, always, no matter what happens to future liabilities. So that if there's no interest, the liability is high, but if there's interest, then that reduces the liability. But they always have the amount of money because it's in a trust. This is not a trust. This goes directly into irrevocable. So that if it doesn't do well.
So what we're looking at is we're comparing what the GASB allows for the standard as far as booking this liability and calculating out the liability. And so in your example, if they have an X amount of money in their trust and they're making annual contributions to that trust, then that's fair. They can make those annual contributions. Now, what changes is as when they perform the actuarial, they're going to actually look at real performance of the trust to determine what the discount rate should be. Now, if the discount rate, if it's invested in the trust that's performing, and meaning the investments are actually performing, then the discount rate that they're able to use is going to yield a present value of those assets as they're invested, given that discount rate. The higher the discount rate, the lower initial upfront investment you need to make. The lower the investment rate, the larger upfront investment you have to make. So in this particular case, if we're not making any investment at all, which has been historically the practice of the city, we would just book the liability, then the discount rate that we must use is the lowest required allowed by GASB. And so that rate is very, very synonymous to what you would expect to receive in our LAIF fund. And it's around 3.75%. I have to look at the actuary to be exact. But if we are actually going to then invest the money, which is what we're recommending tonight, because the agency has the ability to do so, and we're going to invest that money, then we could, for the purpose of calculating the liability, initially assume a better discount rate because we actually have money in the market actually working at a investment strategy better than just sitting in a savings account. So as a result, that reduces then the present value of that liability by investing the money and actually utilizing a higher discount rate for the purpose of the actuarial. And so that's the phase that we're at now. So now as we invest the funds, as the fund performs better and actually builds some history as to what the performance actually is, that may determine what discount rate we can use for future actuarials. But for this initial actuarial, there is an assumption that I was provided with multiple options as to which discount rate to use, depending on how aggressive we want the investment strategy.
Who does the actuarials now?
We're using.
That's okay.
Starts with a B. It's the. Excuse me. I'm sorry, it's not right on top of my head. Bartell.
Yeah, I would. I would agree. I'd like to have a workshop.
If that's a motion, I would like to second it.
I heard nothing, so if someone could make a motion again.
Mr. Cox?
I would like to I'd like more information, and so I don't want to take up it's getting late and we're all getting
I
a
agree.
little antsy. So I'd like to have a workshop if we can quickly so we don't hold this up because I know the value right now, the investments, but I really fully don't appreciate, I don't understand it, so I don't fully appreciate it.
And I like to
Okay,
concur
and that's
make
fair.
a second.
And I'll take whatever time's needed to get the council comfortable with the decision.
That's a motion to schedule it for a workshop.
Do you
as soon
have?
as reasonably
Can you set up a date? 90 days, 120 days. That way it
Oh, I
comes.
don't think it should be more than 60 days because we're going to be really into the budget within 60 days. And
If you like, we can actually, if you don't mind, Mayor, I'm open and we can schedule that as soon as possible, even depending on your schedules.
Okay, so the motion was amended no later than 30 days to have a workshop, and I'm going to go ahead and concur and make a motion, a second to that motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Councilmember Ramirez being absent.
So this will be continued for a workshop within 30 days. Okay, very good. I do have some speaker cards on this item. So now let me see here. Now we're moving on to public comments, and I do have some cards. Robert P. is the first one that I have. Just Robert P. Robert, is there a Robert here that wanted to speak? No? Paul Marsh?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff. I'm going to be very, very quick. I just want to give a thumbs up to the hard work that our city staff does, and also I want to, and the thick skin that they have to have. What I find is this, okay, and it's coming from, I mean, for the most part, the City Council works together, and I appreciate that. But from one city council member, Blanca Gomez, every week, every 2 weeks during a city council meeting, we either have to listen to the staff being distrusted by you, or we have to listen to individual attacks on certain staff members as far as distrust, incompetence. We're not the only ones that hear all this. This goes out to the city. People live stream this. Yeah, so do you. Okay, you should take some of your, go home, study your live stream, and then reevaluate yourself. You may have differences or something like that, but there's some things that maybe should be kept to yourself. You don't have to air publicly everything. Okay, if you distrust the staff, it's, I guess, as you say that every city council meeting, then show some proof, because you haven't done that yet. The staff here works hard. I'm proud of the city of Victorville. I'm a resident of the city of Victorville. Anytime, as a resident, anytime I've had to make any inquiry of staff, I've always gotten an answer, or they follow up, they've gotten back to me. They work hard. They deserve a little bit of appreciation, especially from representatives of the city. You should be working with them instead of working against them.
Romero Rodriguez.
Hello, council members. One of the main things I wanted to bring up is that we need an SBDC office up here in the high desert more than anything else. That we're getting an influx of a lot of foreign immigrants and a lot of immigrants coming down from down the hill. I'm talking Los Angeles, San Gabriel Valley. I mean, it's just fusing with new people starting new businesses, and we have to go to Riverside or Ontario in order for the SBAs or the SBDCs counseling for the community up here. We used to have one. We don't have one anymore, but maybe we could find some space to start hosting an office for the SBDC members that guide all the new businesses coming up here to the high desert. The Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is just growing. More tables are coming, and the city is exploding. Not only the Hispanics, but the Middle Eastern people, the Asian. And I think we do need an SBDC office up here in the high desert, whether Victorville wants to host it, or Hesperia, Adelanto, doesn't matter. It benefits everybody. You start a business here, it benefits everybody. So I think we had one. The lady retired. I have to drive down to Ontario. A lot of people have to drive down, or Riverside, or Los Angeles. But I think the city should think about maybe hosting, talk to one of the members from the SBDC, the presidents, the directors, and maybe have one of these offices up here, because we do need them. We have, thousands of new businesses.
What's the office you're saying?
It's Small Business Administration. So we need something like that. And as to, that's very important, because I visit all the businesses, and I see they have a lot of questions, and sometimes they can help them start off their new businesses and how to really go and talk to the city employees, talk to code enforcement. It's very important. Loans, even expand, as long as you can dream it, you can do it, and that's very important. As to the council being judged, not disrespected, but I believe that you are afforded that you have to have accountability for all we ask. You represent us. We see right now the Constitution in Washington, D.C. being dragged through the floor, through the gutters, and when I grew up here in this country, I went to the presidential inauguration since Reagan, and it's not the same anymore. And it's sad. Maybe we can bring that back, but she's asking for accountability, and everybody should answer that. And it's sometimes it's hard politics. It's sometimes nice. It's sometimes mean. I wish Mr. Smith goes to Washington would be here, but it's not like that anymore. People have two faces. We see that all the time, and hopefully we can come together and we can vote for the proper people come this November. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No other cards. So we need a report from City Manager, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Now we move on to discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items. This is for agendizing items, 3-minute time limit. Anyone have anything?
I do, Madam Mayor, may I? Thank you. So since items 2 and 3 this evening were lost motions, they can be brought back to the council with an approving vote of the body. So I would request that we bring back items 2 and 3 at the soonest possible date, providing CS Legacy Construction would be gracious enough to grant Victorville an extension.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. All those in favor?
Aye. Oh.
The reason that I'm seconding this is that I really want the council to think about all the work you as individuals and what you've done collectively, and think for a moment what happens if after November the new group says we don't like anything you did and simply changes it and throws it out. We've talked before here. In fact, we've debated when is an action final and when are we working together and respecting the action of the council. We really do say that we should work as a team, and even if we cast a losing vote, the majority vote rules, and we are to support that. That is an obligation of the council member, and only because this item, I thought it had been approved twice, but I thought it had been approved twice. And I think the danger of changing our mind because of some reason needs to be discussed, but if that reason is answered, we ought not change our mind, or otherwise, all the things that individually we've worked for, look for next year to somebody to change it all. That would be a terrible thing. It sets a terrible precedent. We see what happens in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. when that happens. I don't want that to happen here. I would hope that that kind of politics would stay out of it. We obviously have reasons for voting for or against, and if we can take a look at that, talk to the attorney, talk to the manager, talk to the staff, and see if they can be answered. In regard to only a few months will be a general plan, I hate to say this, but there's always a general plan amendment. There's a general plan of streets and general plan of parks and general plan. There's always an amendment. So if we wanted to wait, we would never take an action because there's always a study coming up. Please think about it, and I hope we can schedule this and have a discussion and overcome what maybe those objections are. But that's the reason I'm seconding this, to have that discussion, to work with the council as a team and see if we can get this resolved. So that's the reason, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
A motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox.
Now, this motion is just for discussion, to bring back for discussion?
And possible action.
Possible action. If we agree that there's just going to be a discussion, no action, we're wasting our time bringing it back. So, possible action. Whether it's up or down, it should be a possible action. So it's a reconsideration.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez absent and Councilmember Gomez voting no.
So it is understood this will be for discussion and possible action.
Possible, yes. It's just the other item that I have, Madam Mayor.
Could I just clarify that, because I want to make sure possible action implies that you can take action. So
My
it'll be on
intent
the
is that
agenda
we have a
as
full
an
discussion,
action item.
and the council may approve it or deny it. It's a possible
Correct.
action, but it
Correct.
doesn't require. Tonight on the way to the council meeting, when I pulled out from Green Tree Boulevard onto 7th Street, a red pickup ran at a red light, and if I hadn't been watching it, I would have been broadsided. Before I could actually make the turn, another vehicle coming from Costco didn't slow down for the light and turned. This is what we have a lot, pulling in front of right away. And I was watching it and thinking it's going too fast to stop. The driver looked at me, had no intentions of stopping. Gauged his speed that he could swing in front of me and did so. Oh my God. Maybe I can get to City Hall and not have a wreck. And as I came over the underpass, an individual came off the freeway and did the same thing. I was in the middle of the intersection when they pulled in front of me. I'm thinking, if the deputy sheriffs, this happens so often, I know deputies see this. I know they see the violation of the right-of-way. Just a ticket or two, maybe $200 or $300 fine, maybe be in court, maybe headlines in the daily press. Word will get around that I ought not do this and be in danger. I have heard people say, don't worry about it, there's no traffic enforcement in Victorville, which is one of the worst things that can happen is there's no traffic enforcement. But there isn't. And so I want the city council to consider having the manager and the mayor to talk to the sheriff to see what we need to do. Streets safer. We have to do something. It's just gone.
Madam Mayor, if I might, that is actually something that I am evaluating very closely. The council did direct me to bring back a public safety plan. Traffic enforcement is one of a number of elements in the police services side of that plan that we're evaluating. So I'm hoping to have something back to you by next month. That was the desired time frame by the council, and documents coming together, and I definitely expect to address the traffic enforcement as a part of that effort.
Apologies for harping on it. But once I leave this building, I'm getting beat up every day about this. So hopefully we won't let it go too long. Thank you.
Surprised you didn't turn around and go home. Was that all you had?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, so the community has a vested interest in resurrecting the Small Business Development Center in the Victor Valley area. And I'd like the support of the council to direct the city manager to enter into discussion and collaboration partnerships with the city in terms of the city, with the Small Business Development Center to find solutions that are amenable for the small business community in the region that we're living in. And it would be viable for the needs of our business populations, so to speak, to have like a one-stop. And this is just something that would be optional. But again, it would include to enter into discussion and possible negotiations with the Small Business Development Center.
Is there a second?
Oh yeah, that's a motion.
Question for clarification, may I, Madam Mayor? So is it a motion to bring an agenda item to see if we want to give that direction to the city manager?
Do you want me to reread it? Because that's not what it said.
That's why I'm asking for clarification. I'm not clear.
It was to give direction for the city manager to sit and do discussions in possible collaborative partnerships to bring into our region a small business development center.
So you're not requesting an agenda item, you're just seeking to give direction.
So that means, okay, well then I guess if that's not the way to do it and it's the other way, then let's do it that way.
Because if we do, the motion is, we're under the agenda item request, so if that's the request, then it would be at that meeting, if it passes tonight, that we would be seeking to give that direction.
Well, let's try the first one then, which is what I said. I would like a second and the support of the council to give direction, to give direction to him to start those negotiations with this particular entity so that we can foresee, and he'll be bringing a report, and then we can establish if the council wants to move forth with it or not.
I would prefer I would prefer it to be an agenda item because I just need much more information than that to offer that kind of direction.
I do have a motion by Councilmember Gomez and a second by Councilmember Cox. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries with Councilmember Jones voting no and Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez absent.
Yeah, that was all.
I already did. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Now we move on to, do we have time? Well, I guess we do have to finish. Reports from council members.
I mean, I guess I would be remiss not to say anything to the community. I do live stream. That's my accountability to the community. I don't just speak to the audience right in front of me. I have a much wider selection of an audience that doesn't make it here on a Tuesday night. We have a lot of individuals that work very hard and they're not able to come, but if they could live stream as they're driving, and my forte is always to incorporate as much people as possible. I believe that's the true way of having a democracy in order for our communities to be more involved. And sometimes it takes different voices, different ideologies, different cultures, different ways of marketing what we need to market to get across voters who don't vote or are not engaged or feel ostracized from this process, which is governance. So that's why I do a lot of live stream, and this is what you see is what you get. I'm no different in the streets. This is as transparent as I get. Some people may like it, some people may not like it. It would be beneficial for certain types of structures that you may want to partner with me. It may not be viable for others, but this is what you get. I don't have two faces. This is the only one you get. This is the only one I know. And I'm not going to change my decisions or the way I think based on a political aspire. Yeah, it is election year. You know what? I don't care that it's election year. I'm going to vote what I believe the community has endowed me to do. I go out into the community every single day. I wish I can live stream every single thing I do. I do a lot of live stream if you follow me. But if you don't, I do a lot of live stream, a lot of it. Entonces quiero tomar la oportunidad también de decirle a mi comunidad habla hispana, porque habla español, que yo estoy aquí para aportar, para ayudar y ser tu voz. No soy una mujer de dos caras, soy una persona que tú ves, lo que recibes es lo que está aquí. Si quizás no es parte de tu cultura y no te caigo bien, yo no te voy a dar nunca dos caras, yo todavía te represento. Tú me hablas, yo no te voy a dar la espalda, yo todavía estoy aquí para representarte. Todo lo uso en medios sociales, muchas personas también no tienen medios sociales. No solo le hablo a las personas que están aquí sentadas en estos asientos, mi comunidad es mucho más grande que las paredes que tenemos en este edificio. Así que es un placer estar aquí representándoles, pudiendo hablar su idioma, porque mucha gente no lo puede hablar y no lo puede entender, pero yo tengo el privilegio de hablar el idioma y ser parte de una cultura que yo quiero traer, que ustedes sepan que usted tiene una voz aquí. Así que agradezco a las personas que me siguen. Usted es la única persona, o dos o tres o cuatro que hablen el español y están aquí. Ustedes están llevando esta palabra fuera de este domain, y agradezco que estén aquí. La batalla es nuestra y podemos y seguimos, y aquí estamos hoy en día. Muchas gracias.
I think that's all we have.
Oh,
this
I do
evening.
have comments. I'm sorry. I do. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I was reading. All right. So first of all, I want to thank our community for the terrific turnout this evening on something that's clearly very important to them. And in that line, I do wish to apologize for my rather demonstrative outburst earlier. It's not like me to stand up during a council meeting and applaud or do anything like that. I've been in governance for 10 years, and I'm pretty much known for having a poker face and being very objective and neutral in the things that are before me. So I do wish to apologize to my colleagues for that. I've mentioned this before, and I think it's worth mentioning again. This council, the only two employees that we have in this city are the city manager and the city attorney. And we are one boss with 5 heads, and we act in concert to evaluate our 2 employees. Our employees ought to feel like they are in a safe working environment, free from harassment, and I'm very concerned that ongoing comments from behind the dais by Councilmember Gomez are undermining what good employers ought to be doing, and it concerns me that we may have to take some action at some point, because we are responsible. If we are getting to a point where our employees are feeling harassed, and I fear that day could come because of the constant badgering, I think that we need to do something to set ourselves apart from those kind of comments. That my statements are driven by our own policies that says that we discuss directly with the city manager any displeasure with a department or staff member. So this goes beyond not just our own employee, but how we treat other employees. And I, for one, am so grateful for our employees in the city. They work hard. They devote themselves for the betterment of our community. And I cannot stand with any public deriding of their character whatsoever. We are to avoid involvement in personnel issues related to city council's appointed staff. This is in Chapter 7 of our policy manual. That is the city manager and the city attorney, except during city council closed sessions when issues of hiring, firing, promoting, disciplining, etc. may be addressed appropriately. It is inappropriate to take up private personnel issues in public. This is not appropriate in any work setting, and just because we are elected does not mean we get to that we're absolved from poor conduct. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That concludes our meeting. Meeting is adjourned.